Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Fiona G. President Donald Trump is set to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today. And before the meeting, President Trump will be signing executive orders in the Oval Office. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. advances to the full Senate for a confirmation vote. More on the hurdles facing President Trump's nominee for Health Secretary. Trump's tariffs on China go into effect today. We speak with an expert on the back and forth with the communist regime as the president combats fentanyl crisis. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in Costa Rica discussing illegal immigration, drug trafficking, and a controversial freeze on foreign aid programs. We bring you the highlights of his presser with Costa Rica's president. The Super Bowl is just around the corner. Can Kansas City pull off a historic three-peat? Reid and Patrick Mahomes weigh in.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. just cleared his first major hurdle to be the next Secretary of Health and Human Services. The Senate Finance Committee voted to recommend his nomination to the full Senate. The vote was 14-13. It was strictly along partisan lines. Before the full Senate, Kennedy needs support from all but 3 Republicans if Democrats uniformly oppose him. Republican Senators Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Mitch McConnell of Kentucky are also seen as potential no votes. They have voted against President Trump's defense secretary nominee, and they've expressed concerns about Kennedy's work regarding vaccines. And another key update on Trump's cabinet picks. The Senate just voted to confirm Doug Collins as the Secretary of Veteran Affairs. The final vote count was 77-23. Roughly half of Senate Democrats supported him. This makes Collins the 10th Trump cabinet member to get confirmed. 12 more are yet to be confirmed. The Senate is scheduled to vote on Pam Bondi for Attorney General and Russ Vought for OMB Director next. For more confirmation from the senators, NTD's congressional correspondent Melina Weiskup is tracking this closely for us. Let's take a look.
This vote, the ayes are 59, the nays are 38. The nominee is confirmed.
9 out of 22 of Trump's cabinet picks have now officially been confirmed by the Senate. The latest, Chris Wright, is now serving as the Secretary of Energy. Chris Wright is a former fracking executive, which makes it notable the fact that 6 Democrats actually voted with Republicans to confirm him. That means that not all Democrats are totally opposed to Trump's energy production plans. As for the Senate's new confirmations, this afternoon the Senate will vote to confirm Doug Collins as the Secretary of the Veterans Affairs Department. It's likely to be an easy vote for Doug Collins to be confirmed because the Veterans Affairs Department is a nonpartisan department here in Washington, D.C. A more controversial figure that is up for debate this afternoon in the Senate is Pam Bondi, Trump's pick for Attorney General. Democrats have continuously expressed concern that Pam Bondi, they feel, will not be as independent as she needs to be to fulfill the duties of the Attorney General. They're concerned that Trump will hold too much sway over Bondi.
Weaponization of the Justice Department may well occur under your tenure.
There will never be an enemies list within the Department of Justice.
Pam Bondi is likely to be confirmed by the Senate, although on a strict party line vote, similar to what we saw when she was voted out of committee. All Democrats opposed, all Republicans voting yes. Another controversial figure, Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's pick to be the Director of National Intelligence, is now seeing an easier path to victory, with Susan Collins, the Republican from Maine, now saying that she supports Gabbard.
I believe she's committed to strengthening our national security, and I questioned her extensively about her views on Edward Snowden.
This is notable because Susan Collins is one of the most common Republicans to vote against her party. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio continues his Latin America tour. Today, he's in Costa Rica meeting with the president of the Central American country. One issue the two talked about is illegal drug trafficking. Now, Rubio says that Costa Rica does not produce drugs, but illegal gangs use the country to smuggle while on their way to the U.S. The secretary says he wants to help Costa Rica stop those gangs.
But when you confront these groups, they become violent and they become vicious. And so we want to see how we can work, perhaps by allowing more DEA and FBI resources to conduct investigations together with your police and your law enforcement to identify and help you capture and arrest them and bring them to justice.
Rubio then went on to draw similarities between drug trafficking and illegal immigration in Costa Rica. He says the nation is not a source of illegal immigration, but people do pass through the country while they're trying to get into the U.S. Rubio suggests that some of those people could endanger national security. That's why he wants to increase the partnership in biometric data sharing with Costa Rica.
Elements from all over the world, from other continents, from Africa, from the Middle East, that have links to terrorism, that have been stopped through our biometric sharing programs and identified and prevented from moving forward and doing God knows what if they had ever reached the United States. That's an important partnership.
Rubio also addressed a recent freeze of foreign aid programs. The Trump administration paused all State Department programs so that they could review them and see which ones to continue and which ones to stop. Rubio today said that all life-saving programs are exempt from that pause. This includes programs that provide food, medicine, or similar services. And staying on this trip from Rubio, a major offer of cooperation from Central America. Secretary of State Marco Rubio revealed late yesterday that El Salvador's president has offered to accept deported illegal immigrants of any nationality, including violent criminals that are currently imprisoned here in the U.S. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more.
Rubio discussed the offer Monday while visiting El Salvador.
The president, in an act of extraordinary friendship to our country, knowing the challenges we face in the U.S., has agreed to the most unprecedented and extraordinary migratory agreement anywhere in the world.
The agreement would allow El Salvador to accept illegal immigrants arrested in the U.S., effectively a safe third country deal.
From any nationality, be they MS-13 or Tren de Aragua, and house them in his jails.
And El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele's offer goes even further.
And he's also offered to do the same for dangerous criminals currently in custody and serving their sentences in the United States, even if they're U.S. citizens or legal residents.
A U.S. official later clarified that the Trump administration has no immediate plans to deport American citizens, but called Bukele's offer significant. Legal challenges would be expected. Rubio's visit also focused on pushing El Salvador to reject Chinese investment. Washington is urging Bukele to back away from a free trade deal currently under discussion with Beijing. Bukele, a close Trump ally, reinforced his support for the president.
We do not hide our sympathy for President Trump. It is a good moment to strengthen the relationship.
On social media, Bukele posted photos of his country's prison system, stating El Salvador is willing to accept only convicted criminals, including U.S. citizens, into its mega prison for a fee. Bukele is seen as a key regional partner in curbing illegal immigration. His security crackdown has led to the arrests of over 80,000 people and a sharp drop in homicides, a shift Washington credits with reducing Salvadoran migration to the U.S. Rubio also signed the Memorandum of Understanding concerning strategic civil nuclear cooperation during the trip. Moving to Panama now, where President Trump is reigniting debate over the Panama Canal. On Monday, Trump suggested the U.S. could retake the canal, arguing that America invested too much to simply give it away.
And we either want it back or we're going to get something very strong, or we're going to take it back.
Trump vowed to address Beijing's growing influence there.
China's involved with the Panama Canal. They won't be for long.
Rubio says he hopes for more from Panama on the canal, speaking on Fox News.
I was pretty clear, and I hope that we'll see additional steps in the days to come to reaffirm that.
Following discussions with Rubio, Panamanian President Jose Raul Molino agreed not to renew the China Belt and Road Initiative and signaled a willingness to review Chinese control of two key entrance ports. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
We're going to stay on this topic. Let's bring in Mike Leon, NTD News contributor and host of the podcast, Can We Please Talk? Mike, it's good to see you. It's been a minute.
Yeah, good to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Now, let's talk about El Salvador first. We just heard that report there. They're agreeing to take in these deported individuals who have committed crimes. And it's not just their own citizens. Now, they're saying any foreign citizens or even American citizens they're willing to take in and put in jail. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, well, my reaction is twofold. First off, this trip has been very interesting to watch. First, as a Cuban American and somebody who lives down here in Miami, where Marco Rubio is from, it's been interesting to see him and these press conferences that he's done in both languages and speaking Spanish to some of these foreign counterparts. Something that hasn't been done, historically. I think the last time was around 2000 that a Secretary of State visited these areas. So that's been interesting to watch. But in terms of the El Salvador piece of this, and a lot of people that have covered Latin America for years have always found El Salvador very interesting because Bukele's rise within the region, and some people would say it's by force in terms of the crackdowns that he's done. Some have involved citizens that haven't committed crimes, but a lot of it has done with respect to the prison systems that he has built, that he has touted, that just mentioned there in that package that Daniel showed, about how expansive these prisons are and how he has been able to really control El Salvador's crime and gang influence that it's had over the years. So he has been a model that Donald Trump, I know, has talked about on the campaign trail. He's wanted to emulate. Some other countries in the region have thought about it, but El Salvador has probably been the only one that's been able to crack down on it. And so the fact that they're working in partnership, and Rubio, met with some of the folks there in El Salvador to talk about how they can to work on this treaty to help them with the nuclear energy and help reduce, or at least get El Salvador to about 25% using this nuclear energy for their electricity. I think that's kind of part and parcel, as to why they did this deal. And I think Bukele extending the prison systems to help with respect to what we're dealing with, criminality from folks that come into this country, I think is something that is very interesting to watch. And I'm glad that he made that gesture.
Now, next up, Rubio is in Costa Rica today, and he's also scheduled to visit the Dominican Republic soon. What are you expecting or looking out for there?
Yeah, I think this trip has really been about 2 to 3 core principles. First, it's about, like I mentioned, no Secretary of State has gone to this region in over 20-something years. So to have one that's obviously of Spanish-speaking descent is critical. But I also think in terms of establishing ties with Latin America, how much trade and impact we do with Latin America, as you saw with the Panama Canal and what we do there. But also we have, and President Trump ran on, the immigration crisis at the border. A lot of the immigration stems from the countries in the Triangle regions. But then also China's influence with respect to what China is doing with LATAM and the business influence that they have and the economic interest that they have in these countries. And I think Marco Rubio is going there to offer a different solution and a different path and a different ways to work with the United States than maybe the Biden administration wasn't doing, because Anthony Blinken had never made a trip down to these regions, even though he has met with those foreign dignitaries. So I think that's what I'm expecting more of on this trip as he goes to Costa Rica and Dominican Republic and Guatemala. Like I expect more of this diplomacy and saying, hey, there's a new administration in town now. And here's Marco Rubio, who understands the challenges of the world as somebody who's a former U.S. senator and on foreign relations committees. And that's why I think you're seeing out of this trip. And that's what I expect from the trip holistically.
Mike, let's talk more about the Panama Canal, right? There are analysts who say that this trip is as much about China as it is about Latin America. And of course, Marco Rubio, we've seen over the years, he's a China hawk. Now, there is this concern of China's control over the canal. And now we're seeing that Panama, they say they won't be renewing their Belt and Road Agreement with China, but they also won't give control of the canal back to the U.S. Well, what does this say about the type of relationship that Panama is trying to maintain here with both the U.S. and China? I mean, are they trying to have their cake and eat it too?
Fiona, it's the same relationship I try to maintain when I give analysis on something, right? I'm trying to navigate that line of understanding what it is that I want to say without, it's not so much making people upset about in either direction. I think Panama understands economically, right? China has done, at least at the 2 different parts of the port where they have business dealings, they've been able to at least make Panama a good sizable amount of money and add to the Panamanian economy. U.S., on the other hand, specifically with trade from the Panama Canal, has also had an economic impact, right? And obviously, it was a gift from the Carter administration. So you're kind of dancing this line because there is business to be done, or at least made, or at least Panama has done. President Molino has done with China before. But the Trump administration, and specifically Donald Trump, and like you mentioned, Marco Rubio has been very bullish on China for years and years in the Senate. And I think they're seeing that China, as a global superpower, is starting to embrace other regions and other countries and trying to exert economic leverage that could come back to help them later on as an ally, right? And the U.S. doesn't want that, especially at one of the biggest ports where they do a lot of trade and a lot of impact to the U.S. economy. So I think President Molino is trying to dance that line of, hey, we're a sovereign country. You're not going to just come in here militarily and take this over. But I think he understands as well that, like, I can't piss off the Chinese counterparts because I'm doing business with them right now, which is why he's let these deals expire as opposed to just cutting them cold.
Right. And, you know, Trump and his administration, they're saying there's a certain amount, or a significant amount really, of risk to national security with China's influence at the canal. Now, Rubio said that the U.S. would take action if Panama doesn't do something to decrease this influence. What action could he be referring to here?
Yeah, you know, this is something I've been asking because obviously I live down here in Miami. This is the gateway to Latin America. There's a lot of trade that's done here from obviously the different countries in the LATAM region. And I've been asking experts around that. And I'm getting muddied answers because the economic part of it is where you can exert pressure from the economic impact that we do with business dealings with the canal, right? So the President Trump's administration could have, or at least exert or incentivize some of the impact there, so Panama feels it on that end. The second one is the nuclear option, which I hate to use as a lack of a better phrase, but that's really what Donald Trump has talked about with military action. That's what President Molino has come out and said. There isn't going to be any military force with respect to taking back this canal. Again, we all think that that's, you know, push or break the glass in case of emergency, right? But that is something that President Trump has talked about because he feels that China's influence on the canal is something that he just can't allow, given what he campaigned on, but also what he's talked about in these last couple of press conferences, as he's mentioned Panama, as he's mentioned Greenland, and people are like, where are these things coming from? They're coming out of thin air because some of this stuff wasn't really mentioned, but now that he has come into office, he has started to talk about these things, and he understands that. And nobody better to represent us from a foreign diplomatic standpoint than Marco Rubio, who has talked about these issues and China's aggression once upon a time in the Senate.
Mike, quickly before we go here, what are you hearing just from the people around you about this trip? How are they reacting to Secretary Rubio's visit?
Yeah, I think there's and again, I live down here in Miami, Cuban, and obviously there's a big Latin American community from people from those countries and from South America as well, Colombia and Venezuela, that live down here in Miami. I think there's a sense of pride in terms of having the first Secretary of State, or at least Marco Rubio being a Secretary of State that is Spanish speaking, has that immigrant story, so understands what the plight of immigrants are. And I think a lot of people see him on a global stage. I was watching earlier today when he did, I think it was yesterday with the press conference that he did with the El Salvador foreign affairs minister, and they did it in Spanish, and he did his statement first in Spanish. And I think it's just a sense of pride right now for seeing somebody on a global stage like that, being able to really communicate and articulate, specifically in another language, the U.S.'s positions and why we want to maintain diplomatic, relations with these countries, but also understanding that these countries are paramount to the immigration crisis that we've been undergoing. And there's got to be a way to uplift those countries so that immigrants want to stay in those countries and don't want to leave America for a better promise. Marco Rubio has said that in numerous pressers, and I'm pretty proud to see him on a global stage right now communicating the U.S. position on that.
Well, Mike Leon, it was good to see you today. We'll see what Secretary Rubio comes up with next during this trip. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona.
And President Trump is meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This is Trump's first meeting with a world leader during his second term back in office. This comes at a crucial time for U.S. relations with Israel. Joining us now is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Iris, good to see you. Tell us what we know so far about the meeting.
Good afternoon to you as well, Fiona. So this afternoon, President Trump will be meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and he will be welcoming him to the White House right behind us here. And meanwhile, we also know that they will be holding a joint press conference at around 5:10 p.m. Eastern Time this late afternoon. And this crucial meeting comes at a time, of course, when we know that the ceasefire deal, a 6-week ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel, is tentatively still holding, and negotiators are starting to negotiate the next phase of the deal. President Trump over the weekend has called this upcoming meeting a big meeting, and he says they will discuss how to protect Israel, how to bring peace to Israel and its neighbors, encounter our shared adversaries. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, meanwhile, said that they will talk about defeating Hamas, returning all our hostages, and dealing with the Iranian axis in all its components. And meanwhile, we know that President Trump has previously talked about a plan to clean out Gaza. And just today, we got more details about his plan from Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, Stephen Witkoff, as well as his national security advisor, Mike Waltz, who actually briefly gaggled with us earlier this afternoon at the White House. And Witkoff says that Trump's plan is really meant to make Gaza habitable again. Here's what he said. Watch.
Nobody would be allowed to go back to their homes. That's how dangerous it is. There's 30,000 unexploded munitions. It is the buildings that could tip over at any moment. There's no utilities there whatsoever. No working water, electric, gas, nothing. God knows what kind of disease might be festering there. So when the president talks about cleaning it out, he talks about making it habitable, and this is a long-range plan.
And of course, another question is how long this process will take to basically reconstruct Gaza and make it habitable again. And Witkoff told us that it's unrealistic to tell Palestinians that they can go back in, say, 5 years, which is what the current ceasefire deal and the next phase of it would suggest. He says a more realistic time frame will be at least 10 to 15 years before this place can be, of course, livable again. And that's in line with what we heard this morning from a senior White House administration official who told us that President Trump sees Gaza as a demolition site, and it would take at least the next 10 to 15 years to basically reconstruct it. And he adding that President Trump sees it as inhumane to force people to live there before, of course, it comes back to a normal place again. And so a lot of developments here, both when it comes to the next phase of the ceasefire deal, as well as a detailed plan to make Gaza livable again. And that will be something we'll be watching for this afternoon at that joint press conference. Back to you.
Absolutely. Iris, thank you. When we come back, New York passes a law aimed at concealing the names of doctors who prescribe abortion medication. This is a move meant to counter a recent action from Louisiana. And Mexico starts deploying troops to the border with the U.S., this in exchange for a 1-month delay of President Trump's tariffs. We'll be right back.
I'm Amy Grant, and I want to talk to you from my heart about the heart. I would have been the last person on the list to say this woman has a problem with her heart. So no, there was nothing about my life that said, you have a ticking time bomb in your chest. But I did. I wound up in the office of a cardiologist because I was there with my husband. And at the tail end of that, the cardiologist looked at me and said, I want to see you. No one was more surprised than I was to learn I was living with a rare heart condition. He said, Amy, this condition, you'll be fine, and then catastrophic. A few months later, I had open heart surgery that saved my life. And I owe it to the research and life-saving medical breakthroughs developed by the American Heart Association. That's why I'm asking you to join me and become a monthly donor to the American Heart Association. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. If this could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, but your support can save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card and we'll send you this special t-shirt you can wear to show you're part of a community of monthly donors working to help save more lives like mine. I'm grateful for the American Heart Association. Their research gave me more time to do the things I love with the people I love. So listen to your heart. I'm here today because I did. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor and help save even more lives. Thank you.
Welcome back. A federal judge has extended the temporary block on the Trump administration's ability to freeze federal grants and loans. The temporary restraining order was issued on Monday, just before a previous block against the aid freeze was going to expire. The order prohibits the Trump administration from freezing trillions of dollars in federal spending that was previously granted by the government. A group of nonprofits sued the administration over the funding issue. The judge said the nonprofits are likely to succeed in their case against the government. The new block will remain in effect for at least 2 weeks. New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed a bill aimed at concealing the names of doctors who prescribe abortion medication in states where abortion is banned. The law allows doctors to use the name of their medical practice on prescription labels of abortion pills instead of their own name. A doctor in New York was indicted by a Louisiana grand jury for allegedly sending an abortion pill to a pregnant minor in Louisiana. Louisiana is seeking to extradite the doctor to face criminal charges. Abortion is almost entirely banned in the state. Hochul said that Louisiana authorities likely identified the New York doctor through the abortion pill prescription label. The Trump administration is investigating allegations of anti-Semitism on college campuses. The Education Department announced yesterday it was opening new inquiries at 5 universities, including Columbia and Berkeley. The department criticized these colleges, plus the University of Minnesota, Northwestern University, and Portland State University, for allowing anti-Semitism following the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. In a statement, the Education Department called former President Biden's response, quote, toothless. The Department of Justice, meanwhile, announced a multi-agency task force yesterday to tackle anti-Semitism in schools and universities. This comes after an executive order from President Trump warning, quote, resident aliens who joined in pro-jihadist protests would be deported. Moving on now, in exchange for the 1-month pause on President Donald Trump's 25% tariffs, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum starts deploying National Guard troops to the U.S. border.
We've already started moving the troops. The plan was developed by the Secretary of Defense and his team. In some areas where National Guard personnel are stationed, but security issues are less severe, they are being reassigned to the northern border. Others, who were previously stationed in the southern region, will now be moved to the northern border. This deployment does not leave the rest of the country without security, as there are a total of 120,000 National Guard members. People should know that we are not leaving any states unprotected. Rather, it is a reorientation of forces.
China imposed targeted tariffs on American imports today, launching a response to the sweeping duties on Chinese imports from President Trump. Here's a closer look.
U.S. tariffs on China are now in effect, with an additional 10% duty placed on all their goods from 1 minute past midnight on Tuesday. China retaliated within minutes, with its finance ministry announcing it will apply a 15% tariff on U.S. coal and liquefied natural gas on February 10th. as well as an additional 10% on crude oil, farm equipment, and some vehicles. A White House spokesperson had said Monday that President Donald Trump will be speaking with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in the next couple of days, as the world's two largest economies seek a deal that could avert a broader trade war and avoid a deepening conflict. The call would be Trump and Xi's first known talks since Trump took office on January 20th. On Saturday, Trump ordered sweeping tariffs on goods not only from China, but also Mexico and Canada. Part of demands they stop the flow of illegal fentanyl, a leading cause of drug overdoses in the U.S. Trump backed away from his tariff threat against Mexico and Canada on Monday after speaking to leaders of both countries. Before China's Lunar New Year holiday, a foreign ministry spokesperson insisted that Beijing has always firmly safeguarded its national interests, but signaled an openness to talks. On Monday, Trump threatened to further ramp up tariffs on China. He described Tuesday's tariffs as an opening salvo. During his campaign for the presidency, Trump had promised a steeper levy of 60% on Chinese goods. The U.S. has said China is the primary source of the precursor chemicals synthesized into fentanyl by drug cartels in Mexico. China has called fentanyl America's problem and said it would challenge the tariffs at the World Trade Organization.
Now, along with tariffs on some U.S. products, China also announced a wide range of measures targeting U.S. businesses. This includes Google and makers of farm equipment. Here's more on that.
China's Commerce Ministry said it put PVH Corp, the holding company for brands including Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, and US biotechnology firm Illumina on its unreliable entity list. Companies added to the blacklist can be subject to fines and a range of other sanctions. These include a freeze on trade and revocation of work permits for foreign staff. Separately, China's State Administration of Market Regulation said Google was suspected of violating the country's anti-monopoly law and said it initiated an investigation into the company in accordance with the law. Google products, such as its search engine, are blocked in China, but it works with local partners such as advertisers in the country.
We're going to stay on the topic of these tariffs on China. Trade advisor Peter Navarro says that President Trump will be having a phone call with Chinese leader Xi Jinping later this week. And joining us now to discuss live is Stephen Yates, Senior Research Fellow for China National Security with the Heritage Foundation. Stephen, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Tell us what you expect to be discussed on that phone call between Trump and Xi.
Well, it's as the package was reporting, this is going to be a tone setter, sort of seeking where things have left off. Obviously, these two leaders have spoken several times with each other during President Trump's first term. There has been some communication in between his times in office, but not deep and substantive. And so really, we have the whole COVID pandemic. We have massive increase in fentanyl imports to the United States in the Biden years. And we have the phase one trade agreement that was not executed, all hanging in the balance. And I think President Trump would like very much to find a way to lessen tensions, but not concede any ground on policy where China clearly needs to make a better offer to the United States. They're not going to win a trade war with the United States. And I don't think that's what President Trump seeks.
And let's talk more about these tariffs that the U.S. has placed on China so far. Now, China is facing a whole range of other domestic, economic, and social problems right now, whether that be, the lowering birth rate or their real estate crisis. How big of a pain point are Trump's tariffs for the Chinese government right now?
Well, these announced tariffs are sort of in the same category of several others that have come out in the last couple of weeks. They seem to be a pain point sufficient to get a lot of world leaders to come to the phone and come to the negotiation table. The ones that have been suspended are where leaders have come forward and pledged significant action that could change facts on the ground over 30 days. We'll see whether that proves to be true. And so President Xi Jinping, or Chairman Xi Jinping, I should say, has an opportunity to try to offer some kind of meaningful action. It would take a significant move, though, for them to really dramatically cut off this very valuable to them supply of fentanyl to the cartels that has come in and killed many, many Americans. That is the unique part of this particular tariff. President Trump has made clear it is tied to the fentanyl trade. And that's one that 400,000 families in the United States, including my own, are thanking President Trump for making this an early priority.
Let's talk more about this, right? We're hearing Trump say that the Chinese Communist Party has subsidized and incentivized Chinese chemical companies to export fentanyl and other related precursor chemicals. But then we're seeing China now shifting that blame for the fentanyl issue back to the U.S. and saying it rests on the U.S. So how likely is the CCP to take real action to stop these exports, even in the face of these tariffs?
Well, what they're saying now is just disgusting political warfare, which is kind of what they do. That's their stock in trade. It worked in recent years to a shameful degree, but the Select Committee on Strategic Competition with the Chinese Communist Party in the House of Representatives, on a bipartisan basis, put forward a compelling body of evidence that showed that there were known entities in the People's Republic of China that were manufacturing and exporting the fentanyl precursors and getting tax rebates for doing so. I couldn't believe it, but I heard it with my own ears. The Biden White House discounting that there was any such evidence, or they weren't able to verify these claims. It was exceedingly heartwarming to hear the current White House cite that evidence as part of their reason for taking these actions. I don't think the Chinese should expect that the current White House is going to accept this political rhetoric in response. They want action. We have to see a measurable downturn in these exports.
Absolutely. Stephen, I want to ask about Trump's decision to remove China from the de minimis exemption. How much of a difference do you think that will make in preventing drug smuggling?
Well, quite frankly, I found that to be a pleasant surprise. That is something that's been debated in Congress for many, many years. There have been various coalitions that have worked this very, very hard. It's another issue where the Select Committee in the House had put forward a recommendation to make movement on that front. It didn't really seem to get across the finish line, and it wasn't clear whether the new administration was going to take it up immediately. But the executive branch is taking action in advance of Congress reaching a consensus. And if they demonstrate meaningful results and get good progress on it, I hope that the Congress follows by supporting this kind of closing of this loophole. It has been a crazy loophole that's allowed low-cost things and small packages to flood into the United States without reasonable scrutiny or security. It's far past time to have taken action on this. So let's see how it works.
Right. And if China continues to refuse to stem this flow of these drugs, what do you expect President Trump to do next? Or what do you think the president needs to do next?
Well, I mean, the president has been very transparent about these kinds of negotiations. He enters into the talks. He offers some kind of an off-ramp or a period to demonstrate a change in behavior that might alter the terms of negotiations. And if the other party doesn't live up to that, he increases the tools of pressure. He's made clear he's willing to raise higher tariffs. We have lots of other areas where there needs to be progress in U.S.-China relations or American progress with its allies in the Indo-Pacific. Really, if China doesn't find a way to take this offer in good faith and make progress, then I think President Trump works very, very hard with massive investments among the true responsible stakeholders in East Asia and elsewhere, and China can be left behind.
And Stephen, before we go here, let's look at the bigger picture. China's threat to U.S. national security goes far beyond just fentanyl, right? We're already seeing its expanding international influence, such as in Latin America, where Secretary Rubio is right now. We're seeing projects like the Belt and Road Initiative. Could we see tariffs on other countries that have close ties to China, or other actions from Trump against these countries that are friendly with China?
Well, we've seen that come into play. So when we have the question of tariffs with Canada, Mexico, and other parts in this hemisphere, very much it's tied to some significant changes. Our current focus and conversation is on tariffs, not just this segment, but also the broader political and media cycle is on tariffs. But that is just one tool. And there are many, many other areas where the new administration is pushing hard for growth, 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 energy, deregulation, moving forward in significant ways with allies and partners. The sending Secretary Rubio to Panama to secure the canal, but also get Panama to publicly announce withdrawal from the Belt and Road. These are all small but significant steps in a different direction that definitely addresses what you were asking. There's definitely going to be a move to try to rebalance economic relations, but also security orientation. The United States and our responsible allies need to fill the void that China's tried to put forward in terms of money, investment in infrastructure, but there are parties that are coming to the table for that. The AI Infrastructure Investment Initiative, $500 billion, is the beginning of that kind of conversation.
Absolutely. I think you bring up some very important points there. Stephen Yates, Senior Research Fellow for China and National Security with the Heritage Foundation. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
When we come back, the EU is gearing up for tough trade talks with the U.S. This after President Trump threatened new tariffs. One European leader preaches strength, warning others that if you're weak, Trump will eat you. We'll have that and more after the break.
Emeril Lagasse here, and I'm so excited to tell you about my French door air fryer 360. Extra large 26-quart capacity. Cook with up to 70% less calories from fat than deep frying. That's a big deal, my friend. 360 degrees of superheated air gives you fast, even cooking. My 10-in-1 French door air fryer 360 grills, air fries, dehydrates, roasts, bakes, broils, proofs, slow cooks, and toasts. This baby does it all. These French doors are a game changer. Look at how easy that is.
Now, find out how you can try Emeril Lagasse's French Door Air Fryer 360 with 3 cooking tiers, fetch tool, air frying rack, and drip tray in your home for 30 days for just $14.99. Order now and you'll also get Emeril's Air Fryer Favorites recipe book. And we'll automatically upgrade you to our bonus cooking kit free. Plus, find out how you can get free shipping. This offer will not last, so call or click now to order.
You're gonna love it. I guarantee it.
You are not hidden. There's never been a moment you were forgotten. You are not hopeless. Though you have been broken, your innocence stolen. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you.
On streets across America, young people are homeless, abused, in danger. Covenant House is helping young people with nowhere else to turn. But the need is overwhelming. Please call or go online now with your gift of $19 a month. You'll help provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love to more than 2,000 young people who sleep at a Covenant House every night. Homeless young people are afraid and alone. Your monthly donation right now will show them they are loved and safe.
I have no words to express how Covenant House changed my life.
Call or go online now and give just $19 a month. We'll send you this comforting blanket as a reminder of the difference you're making in a young person's life. Call or go online now to safeplacetosleep.org.
And Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries are having a press conference now. They're going to discuss legislative proposals to fight against DOJ and other Trump administration's actions. Let's tune in.
Finding our government. He's proven it. Senate Democrats will unanimously oppose him and do everything we can to prevent him from leading OMB. And should Republicans not see the light and shoulder shrug, this dangerous person into this seat, they'll have to answer to the American people. Russell Vogt wants to cast chaos across America. He's depending solely on Republicans to do it. And as I said, he's a danger to the budget. He's a danger to what people in America need. Now, on the reason we are here. So over the past few days, and Hakeem and I work together really closely and well, and I welcome him to the Senate as he welcomes me to the House, I think. Yeah, okay. Over the past few days, Democrats have warned the American people that DOJ is operating like a shadow government. Yesterday, I said that DOJ is not a real government agency. It has no authority to make spending decisions, to shut down programs, or ignore federal law. This is not debatable. This is an indisputable fact. No authority for spending decisions, to shut down programs, or ignore federal law. Yet Elon Musk took issue with that warning. He said, in answer to a tweet that I said that did this, he said, DOJ, quote, is the one shot the American people have to defeat bureaucracy and restore democracy. Now, give me a break. Nothing screams democracy like having a secret squad of company men pull off a hostile takeover of America's Social Security and tax information in the dead of night. That is not democracy, Mr. Musk. And yet it's precisely what DOJ is doing. It's letting a small group of unelected people, secret, run rampant through the executive branch, accessing the private data millions of Americans need, and God knows what they're going to do with it. God knows. So there are two dangers. One, people's privacy is at stake. Second, that there's a risk that this small group could cut program after program using one excuse or another. So today, Leader Jeffries and I are joining together to push legislation to prevent unlawful meddling in the Treasury Department's payment systems and protect Americans across the country. Our bill aims to do a few simple things. One, to deny access to special government employees that don't have to disclose their conflicts of interest or any other ethic agreements. Two, to deny access to anyone with conflicts of interest or lack of appropriate clearance. And three, include personal tax information into existing privacy protections. We call our legislation Stop the Steal. Whatever DOJ is doing, it's not democracy. We know what democracy is like. It's out in the open. It's not secret. You do two sides debate, and then the elected officials make decisions. Democracy doesn't work in the shadows. Democracy doesn't skirt the rule of law. And it doesn't give special privilege to the ideas and needs of a group of ultra-wealthy people at the expense of American families. Of course we should talk about reform. Reform's a worthy cause. Everyone agrees we should find ways to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of government. But you know what history shows? When it's done in the dark of night, it always leads to bad results. When these DOJ people decide to cut a program, have they even talked to the people who run the program? Have they even done a little research? Have they heard the other side? Or are they just in such rush to cut anything they can so that they can keep tax breaks and give deeper tax breaks to the wealthiest of Americans? Undoubtedly not. They are not checking. They are not debating. They are not doing things in sunlight. So, we want reform. We'd like to cut waste, but do it in front of the American people. Hear the arguments. Have the back and forth that has been the hallmark of this republic for over 200 years. You don't have a small group of select people who have little experience across the breadth of government have access to these records and an ability to cut funding. The American people have a right to be part of the debate as to what programs should be cut. And just because a small group of people think they know better than the American people doesn't make it true. So, we are going to do everything we can to sound the alarm and fight with everything we've got to stop this horrible, horrible act by this Doge group with the, of course, the permission, acquiescence, encouragement of Donald Trump.
Is your issue with the process here, or is your issue that Elon Musk is the one that's in charge?
Our issue is, of course, with the whole process, secret, behind closed doors, and you say they don't want to cut. Look, when we saw what they tried to freeze payments to just about everything, what they want to do. So our belief is there's a real danger, a terrible, terrible danger, and a looming danger that they will not only have access to Americans' privacy information, but that they will use that to cut programs left and right. We're concerned that Musk is in charge of Doge, but we're concerned about how the whole process works. And ultimately, the buck falls with Donald Trump, the president. But we are concerned that a small number of people were concerned with the whole process, including Musk and including the others who were in it. Go ahead, Hakeem. Do you want to?
As Leader Schumer indicated, the problem lies with some individuals who have been put in charge of this raid on the government, including Elon Musk. But it also relates to the so-called special government employees who aren't required to adhere to the ethical laws and the disclosure requirements that were put in place by Congress in a bipartisan way for a reason, to make sure that people have the best interests of the American people at heart. And that clearly is not the case as it relates to this unlawful access to the Treasury payment system.
When it's something so important as to who the government helps, it should be done in a way that adheres to our democratic principles: openness, debate, discussion, and reflecting a broad group of people who have inputs into it, not just a very limited few meeting in secret. Yes.
Now we're seeing there live Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries just presenting some legislative proposals to fight against the Doge and other Trump administration actions. We'll have more on that later. And now coming up, today President Trump signs a national security presidential memorandum restoring maximum pressure on Iran, denying Iran all paths to a nuclear weapon, and countering Iran's malign influence abroad. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Hi friends, Richard Karn here. Now I'm known as the guy who can fix just about anything, but the technology in most appliances requires very special training to fix. My point is, even I know when I've met my match, and that's why my family has Choice Home Warranty. So we won't get stuck with high-priced repairs.
Choice Home Warranty covers over 25 major home systems and appliances. That's your AC, heating, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and so much more.
Imagine for less than a cup of coffee a day, Choice Home Warranty can help protect you from expensive major system and appliance breakdowns that your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover. But you have to call now before it's too late.
Every homeowner should have Choice Home Warranty. Your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover your appliances.
Washing machine, dryer, refrigerator, air conditioner. If I had any issues arise, they were able to take care of it immediately.
Now, homeowner's insurance won't protect you when your home's major systems and appliances break down due to normal wear and tear. But Choice Home Warranty will. They can help cover repairs and replacements.
Choice Home Warranty is the best warranty we've ever used. It would save you so much money in the long run.
Hey, I'm not the only one raving about Choice Home Warranty. They were named a Best Home Warranty Company and Best Claim Service by U.S. News 360 Reviews.
Call Choice Home Warranty now and get access to a nationwide network of over 15,000 technicians and the latest appointment setting technology so you'll know when they're on their way.
If I have an issue with an appliance or something around the house, I just call up Choice Home Warranty and I don't have to worry about that.
So, do what this old DIYer did and call Choice Home Warranty now before something breaks down. Tell them I sent you and get your first month free.
Call Choice Home Warranty before it's too late and get protection for your heating, AC, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and more. Call for your free quote today. Call in the next 5 minutes and get your first month free. 800-360-6782. 800-360-6782.
A painting that has true beauty. I imagine it's like a door. The artist holds the key to open the door and bring people to a purer world. A world where people are more compassionate.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Fiona G. President Donald Trump signing more executive orders today before his meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this afternoon. He also signs a memo denying Iran all paths to a nuclear weapon. 2 Senate committees vote to advance the confirmations of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, what challenges they face in the full Senate. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in Costa Rica discussing illegal immigration, drug trafficking, and a controversial freeze of foreign aid programs. The highlights of his presser with Costa Rica's president. New tariffs taking effect. President Trump's 10% levy on Chinese imports is now in place. How Beijing is responding.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Senate Republicans continue the confirmation process for President Trump's cabinet nominees, this despite Democratic opposition. And our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez joins us live from the Capitol. Luis, tell us more about the latest on the confirmation process.
Of course, Fiona. Well, as you mentioned, Democrats are vowing to stall the confirmation process of President Trump's cabinet picks. Today, the Senate confirmed Doug Collins to be the next Secretary of Veterans Affairs with a bipartisan support from Democrats. And later tonight, we expect to see a vote for Pam Bondi to become the next Attorney General of the United States, the 87th Attorney General of this country. So as of today, as of right now, 10 nominees have been confirmed in the Senate, which is really important, Fiona, to note that if we jump back to 2021 during President Biden's first month in office, at this point in 2021, Biden only had 6 of his nominees confirmed. And of course, Senate Majority Leader Senator Thune is boasting that Senate Republicans are fulfilling their mandate and pushing through at a steady pace those cabinet nominees for President Trump to get started with his campaign promises.
And Louise, who's up next for consideration?
Well, today we saw how the Senate's Finance Committee had an internal vote to advance the nomination on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to become the next Secretary of Health and Human Services. This despite some hesitation by some Republicans, in particular with the reputation and the comments that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has made in the past regarding vaccines. Let's listen to what Senator Thom Tillis had to say about this.
I asked him specifically if it was his intent to let the scientists of the CDC, the NIH, BARDA, and other organizations to work independently. He said to me under oath that he would. If he fails to do that, that will be a concern for me and something I'll bring up in a future oversight hearing.
So the nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. passed the Senate's Finance Committee on a party line vote. All Democrats opposed RFK Jr.'s nomination. And also, it's important to note that Senator Bill Cassidy, one of the Republicans who had been a holdout to say whether or not he would support RFK Jr., voted in favor of him in this in-committee vote. Now the nomination is moved to the Senate floor, where at some point this week we'll see a full Senate vote. Also today, about 30 minutes ago, we saw that the Senate's Intelligence Committee advanced the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard to become the next Director of National Intelligence. Let's listen to what Senator Susan Collins, who was one of those Republicans who was holding out on whether or not she would support the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard, had to say about today's vote.
I believe she's committed to strengthening our national security, and I questioned her extensively about her views on Edward Snowden, and I am now satisfied that she will not seek in any way to have him pardoned.
So, Fiona, RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard were one of the most controversial nominees for President Trump. They've passed their committee votes, now head into a full Senate floor vote, and we expect to see the votes that we see party line votes in committee to be replicated on the full Senate floor. It remains to be seen if both nominees will get the 50-plus votes needed to be confirmed. Back to you, Fiona.
Luis Martinez reporting from the Capitol there. Thank you. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio continues his Latin America tour. Today, he's in Costa Rica meeting with the president of the Central American country. One issue that the two talked about is illegal drug trafficking. Rubio says Costa Rica does not produce any drugs, but illegal gangs use the country to smuggle while on their way to the U.S. The secretary says he wants to help Costa Rica stop those gangs.
But when you confront these groups, they become violent and they become vicious. And so we want to see how we can work, perhaps by allowing more DEA and FBI resources to conduct investigations together with your police and your law enforcement to identify and help you capture and arrest them and bring them to justice.
Rubio then went on to draw similarities between drug trafficking and illegal immigration in Costa Rica. He says the nation is not a source of illegal immigration, but that people do pass through the country while they're trying to get to the U.S. Rubio suggests that some of those people could endanger national security. That's why he wants to increase the partnership in biometric data sharing with Costa Rica.
Elements from all over the world, from other continents, from Africa, from the Middle East, that have links to terrorism, that have been stopped through our biometric sharing programs and identified and prevented from moving forward and doing God knows what if they had ever reached the United States.
Rubio also addressed a recent freeze of foreign aid programs. The Trump administration paused all State Department programs so that they could review them and see which ones to continue and which ones to stop. Rubio today said all life-saving programs are exempt from that pause. This includes programs that provide food, medicine, or other similar services. And President Donald Trump is meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this afternoon. This is Trump's first meeting with a world leader during his second term in office. And it comes at a crucial time for U.S. relations with Israel. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
This afternoon, President Trump will be meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and he will be welcoming him to the White House right behind us here. And meanwhile, we also know that they will be holding a joint press conference at around 5:10 p.m. Eastern Time this late afternoon. And this crucial meeting comes at a time, of course, when we know that the ceasefire deal, a 6-week ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel, is tentatively still holding, and negotiators are starting to negotiate the next phase of the deal. President Trump over the weekend has called this upcoming meeting a big meeting, and he says they will discuss how to protect Israel, how to bring peace to Israel and its neighbors, encounter our shared adversaries. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, meanwhile, said that they will talk about defeating Hamas, returning all our hostages, and dealing with the Iranian axis in all its components. And meanwhile, we know that President Trump has previously talked about a plan to clean out Gaza, and just today we got more details about his plan from Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, Stephen Witkoff, as well as his national security advisor, Mike Waltz, who actually briefly gaggled with us earlier this afternoon at the White House. And Witkoff says that Trump's plan is really meant to make Gaza habitable again. Here's what he said. Watch.
Nobody would be allowed to go back to their homes. That's how dangerous it is. There's 30,000 unexploded munitions. It is the buildings that could tip over at any moment. There's no utilities there whatsoever. No working water, electric, gas, nothing. God knows what kind of disease might be festering there. So when the president talks about cleaning it out, he talks about making it habitable, and this is a long-range plan.
And of course, another question is how long this process will take to basically reconstruct Gaza and make it habitable again. And Witkoff told us that it's unrealistic to tell Palestinians that they can go back in, say, 5 years, which is what the current ceasefire deal and the next phase of it would suggest. He says a more realistic time frame will be at least 10 to 15 years before this place can be, of course, livable again. And that's in line with what we heard this morning from a senior White House administration official who told us that President Trump sees Gaza as a demolition site, and it would take at least the next 10 to 15 years to basically reconstruct it. And he adding that President Trump sees it as inhumane to force people to live there before, of course, it comes back to a normal place again. And so a lot of developments here, both when it comes to the next phase of the ceasefire deal, as well as a detailed plan to make Gaza livable again. And that will be something we'll be watching for this afternoon at that joint press conference. Back to you.
Also today, President Donald Trump signed a memorandum restoring maximum pressure on Iran, denying it all paths to a nuclear weapon and countering its influence abroad. Now, joining us live to discuss all things Middle East and this evening's meeting between Trump and Netanyahu is Michael Pregent, Middle East analyst with the Hudson Institute. Michael, thank you for joining us. I want to talk about this memorandum here, right? It calls for Iran's terrorist network to be neutralized. Do you think that Trump feels that there's more to do there, given the fact that we're 3 weeks deep into this hard-won ceasefire deal?
Well, thanks for having me. I think what Trump knows is that Israel can handle this. And we've seen Israel take on American enemies. Remember, Hamas is a U.S. designated terrorist organization, as is Hezbollah, as is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Iran. And we've seen Israel be able to handle all three of these American enemies because they are also Israel's enemies. So I see a Netanyahu-Trump relationship over the next 6 months, next year, that will deal with these adversaries. Maximum pressure needs to be put in place. That's smart power, use sanctions and designations and economic pressure on the regime. But the kinetic option is there, and Israel is ready to take that responsibility on. And I'm sure the Trump administration is going to be happy to have Israel take on these U.S. adversaries for it.
But tell us more. What does Israel play? What is its role here in this whole situation, especially considering Trump has barely just gotten into office and he has 4 years left to reach whatever goals he has on the issue of Iran?
Well, we continue to look at the Hamas-Gaza issue as something that happened to Israel when 40 Americans were killed. Well, there were American hostages. There still are American hostages. We don't know how many are still alive. And again, the United States, along with its allies, has helped Israel thwart attacks from Iran in the form of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones. So what I see now is, this administration is all about the defeat of Hamas. Witkoff may be late to the game there. He doesn't use that same language, but Mike Waltz, standing right next to Witkoff, uses that language. So does the Secretary of Defense, and so does the Secretary of State, and of course the President does as well. So Netanyahu is going to defeat Hamas in Gaza. The Biden administration wanted Hamas to survive. Qatar wants Hamas to survive. Turkey wants Hamas to survive because of their support for the Muslim Brotherhood. But all the other Arab neighbors that are U.S. allies, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Jordan, and other countries want Hamas to end. So I think that Netanyahu will have a very supportive administration in the Trump administration to carry out those immediate objectives. Hamas can have no role in phase 2 or phase 3 of this Gaza ceasefire. And Hamas is already breaking its promises in this ceasefire by hijacking, humanitarian aid that's coming in and deciding who gets it.
And speaking more of the specifics of this memorandum, I want to talk about the fact that Trump ordered the cancellation of sanctions waivers and is now calling for actions to reduce Iran's oil exports to zero. How big of a blow would that be for the Iranian regime?
Well, if we look at maximum pressure under the first Trump administration, the regime could not fund Hezbollah. It could not fund the Iraqi militias. The Houthis were actually raising money for Hezbollah. The Houthis are not a very, they're not an economic powerhouse. They can't do that kind of stuff. So maximum pressure put Iran in a position where they just couldn't do a lot of the things that they're doing. The Biden administration lifted maximum pressure, flushed Iran with cash to the point of it, $450 billion. But under the Trump administration, they only had $4 billion in reserves. So October 7th would not have happened without Iran being flushed with cash from the Biden administration. So maximum pressure is crucial. The Biden administration should have used maximum pressure to bring Tehran to the table on its knees and negotiate an actual deal that would keep Iran from a nuclear weapon. Instead, they lifted sanctions, they took off the designations of the Houthis, and we are where we are now because of the last 4 years.
Right, and I think it's fair to say, right, Michael, a lot has happened in the Middle East over the past 18 months. So with now Trump back in power, vowing to strengthen Israel and weaken Iran, how do you realistically see the landscape changing in that region over the next 4 years? You've talked about it a little already.
Right, so if you're in the Middle East and you're a country that's not Iran or not Israel, you're going to be very small, regardless of your geographical size. So the map you're showing right now, Iran is bigger than any other country there, and so is Israel, as small as it is. So anything that hurts Iran will be a Trump policy. Anything that helps Israel will be a Trump policy. Anything that helps Israel and Saudi Arabia be part of the Abraham Accords will be a focus. Syria, the Trump administration has said they're not really interested in getting involved in Syria. Let's see how that plays out with former al-Qaeda operative Jelani now wearing a suit and trying to act like he's a Hamas politician. With Iraq is going to be cut off from Iran. Under the first Trump administration, Iraq was allowed to continue to buy Iranian gas and oil. Under this administration, from what I've heard inside, is that Iraq will be cut off from Iran, meaning Iran can no longer use Iraq as a life support system. So this maximum pressure that's going into place today will be way more effective than it was during the first Trump administration.
Michael, I want to talk before we go here about resettling and rebuilding efforts in that region. We're already seeing Jordan and Egypt strongly rejecting Trump's calls to take on these Palestinian refugees. But then Trump is saying that the Gaza Strip is a mess. So, I mean, What happens there? What do you think the final decision is going to be there?
Well, the ugly truth is Egypt doesn't want them. That's the ugly truth. And the ugly truth is Jordan doesn't want them. And the reality is, you can't go back to this, what you're showing on your screen. They've already had Gazans go back to the north and turn around and say, there's nothing left. So if you actually listen to what the Trump administration is proposing, it's actually a humanitarian option. Let's move you to one of your these neighboring countries that say that they're allied with you, that they're allied with the Palestinians, and let's have them take care of you for 10 to 15 years. But in each case when that's happened, it's led to instability, whether it's Jordan, whether it's Syria, and whether it's Egypt. That's why there is a Gaza. That's why there is a West Bank. because both Jordan and Egypt have rejected taking in Palestinian refugees because of the instability that follows when they allow groups like Hamas or Fatah or other groups to speak for them and kill in their name. That's what the Trump administration is trying to stop.
It certainly is a very complex issue. There's a lot to consider there. We'll see what comes out of that conversation with the president and the Israeli prime minister. Michael Pregent, Middle East analyst with the Hudson Institute.
One thing, I'm no longer with the Hudson Institute. I'm moving to another think tank, and I'll announce that next week.
All right. Well, we'll be excited to hear
you.
what that is. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And coming up, new tariffs take effect. President Trump's 10% levy on Chinese imports is now in place. How Beijing is responding, we'll have that story and more after this break.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, I have an important message about security. Write down the number on your screen so you can call when I finish. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. This is a lock for your life insurance, a rate lock that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. But be careful. Many policies you see do not have one. But you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. Call this number to learn more. This plan was designed with a rate lock for people on a fixed income who want life insurance that fits their budget and is simple to get. Coverage options start at $9.95 a month, less than 35 cents a day. Act now, and your rate will be locked in for life. It will never increase, guaranteed. This is lifelong coverage that can never be canceled as long as you pay your premiums, guaranteed. And your acceptance is guaranteed, with no health questions. You cannot be turned down because of your health. Call for your information kit and read about this rate lock for yourself. You'll also get a free beneficiary planner. Both are free with no obligation. Don't miss out. Call for information, then decide. Read about the 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. Don't wait. Call this number now.
Call now and you'll also get this free beneficiary planner. Use this valuable guide to record important information and your final wishes, and it's yours free just for calling. So don't wait. Call 1-800-357-4821 for your free information. That's 1-800-357-4821. There's no risk or obligation. That number again is 1-800-357-4821. That's 1-800-357-4821. 1-800-357-4821. Call now.
The impact of a meal goes well beyond feeding our bodies. Because when people are fed, futures are nourished. And with your help, together we can end hunger. Join the movement at feedingamerica.org/actnow.
Thanks for staying with us. The Trump administration is investigating allegations of anti-Semitism on college campuses. The Education Department announced yesterday that it was opening new inquiries at 5 universities. This includes Columbia and Berkeley. The department criticized these colleges, plus the University of Minnesota, Northwestern University, and Portland State University, for allowing anti-Semitism following the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. In a statement, the Education Department called former President Biden's response, quote, toothless. The Department of Justice, meanwhile, announced a multi-agency task force yesterday to tackle anti-Semitism in schools and universities. This comes after an executive order from President Trump warning, quote, resident aliens who joined in pro-jihadist protests would be deported. China imposed targeted tariffs on American imports today, launching a response to the sweeping duties on Chinese imports from President Trump. Here's a closer look.
U.S. tariffs on China are now in effect, with an additional 10% duty placed on all their goods from 1 minute past midnight on Tuesday. China retaliated within minutes, with its finance ministry announcing it will apply a 15% tariff on U.S. coal and liquefied natural gas on February 10th, as well as an additional 10% on crude oil, farm equipment, and some vehicles. A White House spokesperson had said Monday that President Donald Trump will be speaking with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in the next couple of days, as the world's two largest economies seek a deal that could avert a broader trade war and avoid a deepening conflict. The call would be Trump and Xi's first known talks since Trump took office on January 20th. On Saturday, Trump ordered sweeping tariffs on goods not only from China, but also Mexico and Canada. Part of demands they stop the flow of illegal fentanyl, a leading cause of drug overdoses in the U.S. Trump backed away from his tariff threat against Mexico and Canada on Monday after speaking to leaders of both countries. Before China's Lunar New Year holiday, a foreign ministry spokesperson insisted that Beijing has always firmly safeguarded its national interests, but signaled an openness to talks. On Monday, Trump threatened to further ramp up tariffs on China. He described Tuesday's tariffs as an opening salvo. During his campaign for the presidency, Trump had promised a steeper levy of 60% on Chinese goods. The U.S. has said China is the primary source of the precursor chemicals synthesized into fentanyl by drug cartels in Mexico. China has called fentanyl America's problem and said it would challenge the tariffs at the World Trade Organization.
Staying on this issue, along with tariffs on some U.S. products, China also announced a wide range of measures targeting U.S. businesses, including Google and makers of farm equipment. Here's more on that.
China's Commerce Ministry said it put PVH Corp, the holding company for brands including Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, and US biotechnology firm Illumina on its unreliable entity list. Companies added to the blacklist can be subject to fines and a range of other sanctions. These include a freeze on trade and revocation of work permits for foreign staff. Separately, China's State Administration of Market Regulation said Google was suspected of violating the country's anti-monopoly law and said it initiated an investigation into the company in accordance with the law. Google products, such as its search engine, are blocked in China, but it works with local partners such as advertisers in the country.
The European Union says that it's ready for tough negotiations with the United States to protect its own interests. Trade ministers gathered in Warsaw today to discuss transatlantic relations, this following threats of tariffs by President Trump.
I worked with Donald Trump for years when I was Prime Minister, and if you are weak, he eats you. And if you don't negotiate, he kills you. So, in fact, you need that. He's losing the appetite on Europe. I think this is how we should deal with him, be strong, but being united.
We do believe that we have to maintain our multilateral trade system, but at the same time, we don't have to be naive, and we must prepare the worst, meaning retaliation if needed.
We believe that through constructive engagement and discussion, we can resolve this problem. We are prepared for this negotiations, but also at the same time it's very clear that if it would be hit unfairly or arbitrarily, we will respond firmly.
EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said Europe will be pragmatic in finding solutions. Trump declared over the weekend that he'll soon impose tariffs on imports from the EU. Von der Leyen said today that a lot is at stake for both sides. The EU leader says that jobs, businesses, and industries in Europe and the U.S. rely on this transatlantic partnership. When we come back, Swedish police say that about 10 people were killed during a shooting today at an adult education center. The final death toll and the number of wounded have not yet been determined. And President Trump's Middle East envoy explains why the U.S. is calling on Arab nations to temporarily accept displaced Palestinians from Gaza. That and more after this break.
lasted 5,000 years was once almost lost. Now, the world awaits the divine culture's return.
And President Trump signed more executive orders earlier today. Here's a playback of what he had to say in the Oval Office.
Jewish people out of our country, which is very important. Will, perhaps we'll go through the first one, please.
Yes, sir. So earlier today, before the press came in, you signed a commission appointing Chris Wright to be your next Secretary of Energy. We have another commission prepared for your signature, sir. This is Doug Collins to be Secretary of the VA. Doug Collins of Georgia.
Two very good men. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Next up, in light of numerous actions taken by a number of bodies of the United Nations which exhibit a deep anti-American bias, we have an executive order prepared for your attention that would withdraw the United States from the UN Human Rights Council, would withdraw the United States from the UNRWA, which is a refugee organization, and would also review American involvement in UNESCO, which has also exhibited anti-American bias. More generally, the executive order calls for a review of American involvement and funding in the UN in light of the wild disparities in levels of funding among different countries that, as you've expressed previously, is deeply unfair to the United States.
So I've always felt that the UN has tremendous potential. It's not living up to that potential right now. It really isn't, hasn't for a long time. It has, there are great hopes for it, but it's not being well run, to be honest, and they're not doing the job. A lot of these conflicts that we're working on should be settled, or at least we should have some help in settling them. We never seem to get help. That should be the primary purpose of the UN, the United Nations. And again, it's got great potential, and based on the potential, we'll continue to go along with it, but they got to get their act together.
What would they need to do, sir, to get their act together?
Well, they got to be fair to countries that deserve fairness. They have some countries, as you know, that are outliers, that are very bad, and they're being almost preferred as countries to those that do their job and are doing a good job, and they have to really, they're going to end up losing, a lot of countries, they're going to end up losing their credibility like other organizations, and then they're going to be nothing. The potential of the United Nations, and not everybody agrees with me on this, the potential of the United Nations is fantastic if properly run. So we'll see what happens.
How much money are you willing to take away from them?
Well, we're taking away a little bit, but we're not looking to take away money. This is so important that we're really, as you know, the United Nations is largely funded by us. But, and it shouldn't be, it should be funded by everybody, but we're disproportionate, as we always seem to be. But it's something that if it ever lived up to the potential, in 10 minutes it would make up the difference. That's the kind of power it could have. Right now it doesn't have that power.
Next, sir, this is a national security presidential memorandum that seeks to impose maximum pressure on the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Many of these provisions are similar to actions that your administration took during your first administration. The basic idea here is to have every department and agency, or many departments and agencies in your government attempt to sanction and control Iranian activities, particularly relating to the Iranian nuclear program and the Iranian export of terrorism through support of various proxy groups abroad. And the intent here is to give you all of the possible tools to, I'd say, engage with the Iranian government to ensure that going forward they are less of a malign actor on the world stage.
So this is one that I'm torn about. Everybody wants me to sign it. I'll do that. It's very tough on Iran. It's what we had before. We would have never had the problem. You would have never had October 7th. we would have never had the problem had the election gone a different way, which it should have. But this one, I think, more than made up for it. I think we're doing things, and it shows that more than made up for it, much more historic. The Iran situation, hopefully, I'm going to sign it, but hopefully we're not going to have to use it very much. We will see whether or not we can arrange or work out a deal with Iran, and everybody can live together, and maybe that's possible, and maybe it's not possible. So I'm signing this, and I'm unhappy to do it, but I really have not so much choice because we have to be strong and firm, and I hope that it's not going to have to be used in any great measure at all. It'd be great if we could have a Middle East and maybe a world at total peace. Right now you don't have that. When I left, you had peace all over the world, and now you have the world is blowing up. As you know, Bibi is coming in to see me later. Others are coming in to see me. We'll see what we can do. But I'm signing this, and hopefully it will be a document which won't be very important, will hardly have to be used.
So what kind of deal would you be prepared to make?
Well, we're going to see. I mean, we're going to see. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. With me, it's very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. We don't want to be tough on Iran. We don't want to be tough on anybody, but they just can't have a nuclear weapon.
Mr. President, are you going to engage in conversations with your counterpart in Iran?
I would.
Do you want to block the sale of Iranian oil to other nations?
Well, we have the right to do that, and that's what I did before, and they had no money. They wouldn't have had the money for Hamas or Hezbollah and anybody else. It could have been solved, this thing. It just, if things went the way they should have, this would have been over long ago, but it's not over.
How close do you think Iran is to developing a nuclear weapon?
I think they're close. I think they're close. They're too close. But again, you could go back 4 years, I would have said they would have had it during this intervening period. But they're pretty close, Peter.
And why say that you're unhappy to sign it if it's Iran and their proxies who have threatened to retaliate against you and your team by killing you guys for taking out Soleimani?
Well, they haven't done that, and that would be a terrible thing for them to do. Not because of me. If they did that, they would be obliterated. That would be the end. I've left instructions. If they do it, they get obliterated. There won't be anything left. And they shouldn't be able to do it. And Biden should have said that, but he never did. I don't know why. Lack of intelligence, perhaps. But he never said it. If that happens to a leader, or close to a leader, frankly, if you had other people involved also, you would call for total obliteration of a state that did it. That would include Iran. So I'm signing this, and it's a very powerful document, but hopefully we're not going to have to use it.
Mr. President, if the Prime Minister today were to ask you for help in striking at Iran's nuclear facilities to prevent the kind of progress towards a nuclear weapon, would you give him the green light? Would it, either to do it himself or for the U.S. to participate with him?
I don't know that that's what he's going to be asking for. I have no idea that it is. You're telling me. We're going to have a pretty long meeting. We're going to be discussing a lot of things, not only that, but a lot of things. And I'll let you know if the time comes to let you know. But right now, that's not something that I can discuss.
Mr. President, when you said if they do it, they get obliterated. Just to be clear, you're talking about if Iran made an attempt on your life.
Yeah, that would be called total obliteration. And I can't imagine they do that. It should have been stated by Biden, but he didn't state it because he had no clue, as you know, as everybody knows.
What is your vision, actually, for the relationship with Iran?
Do you have anything else?
No, that's all we got.
My vision for what?
A relationship with Iran, and would you?
I'd love to have a good relationship with everybody. They can't have a nuclear weapon. That was the only thing that was very important. They can't have a nuclear weapon. Beyond that, it would be very tough if they insist on doing that. They have some of their leadership, I can tell you right now, and maybe you know it, maybe you don't, but there are many people at the top ranks of Iran that do not want to have a nuclear weapon just for that very reason.
Mr. President, what's your reaction to China's retaliatory tariffs?
It's fine. It's fine. We're going to do very well against China and against everybody else. Right now, they've taken advantage of the Biden administration like I've never seen. I've never seen. The deficit with China is about $1 trillion. Think of it, $1 trillion. They're using our money to build their military. And Biden let that happen. You know, we're taking a lot of fires here. We came back. This is like a different place. The good news is we're doing very well. We're doing well with countries that nobody expected we'd do well with. We are respected again as a nation, maybe at a level that people haven't seen for many, many decades. But when I left, we didn't have any wars. I defeated ISIS, 100% of the ISIS caliphate, and now the world seems to be ready to blow up, but we'll see if we can stop it.
Mr. President,
Have you reached out to the Iranians about any kind of deal?
Say it.
Have you reached out to the Iranians about any kind of deal to start those
I would
discussions?
reach out. I mean, I have nothing. I say I'm one that doesn't care whether I reach out or they reach out. A lot of people say, let them reach out, sir. And to me, it doesn't matter. It's just talk. But I want to see everybody do well. I want to see great countries, and I want to see peace in the Middle East and elsewhere. We're also working very hard with respect to Russia, Ukraine. That's a bloodbath. It's a total bloodbath. What's going on there is incredible. What's going on with the soldiers, young soldiers being killed by the thousands. I mean, literally by the thousands. And we want to see if we can get that stopped. And I think we've had some very good talks.
Any update on when you would speak to President Xi, sir? Any update on when you would speak to President Xi?
No, we'll speak to him at the appropriate time. I'm in no rush. At the appropriate
Do you think that conversation can lend itself to the type of freeze that it meant for the tariffs for Canada and
Well,
Mexico?
we'll see what happens. I mean, well, there's a short-term freeze with Mexico, and, as you know, and with Canada. But they've agreed to be very, very strong on the border, stronger than they ever were by far, by a factor of about 30. And in addition to that, as you can see, we've been strong because we've had numbers like you've never seen before. I mean, the border is now closed, really closed. And with that being said, we're letting good people come through, and we want good people to come into our country. But the border is closed.
In your talks with Prime Minister Netanyahu today, do you intend to press him about how many deaths there have been amongst Palestinians? Are you concerned about that death?
I talk about that too. You know, both sides mean a lot. I talk about that. I talk about the other side. I talk about everything.
What's your main message to him today during your meeting?
Well, I'm here to listen. He's here to see me, and I'm here to listen. So.
Will you continue to press?
At the right time, I'll give him my
Mr.
message.
President, will you continue to press for this idea that Jordan and Egypt take Palestinians from Gaza?
Yeah, I would like to see Jordan. I'd like to see Egypt take some. Look, the Gaza thing has not worked. It's never worked. And I feel very differently about Gaza than a lot of people. I think they should get a good, fresh, beautiful piece of land, and we get some people to put up the money to build it and make it nice and make it habitable and enjoyable and make it a home.
They don't want to leave, though. Palestinians say they don't want to leave.
I don't know how they could want to stay. It's a demolition site. It's a pure demolition site. If we could find the right piece of land or numerous pieces of land and build them some really nice places with plenty of money in the area, that's for sure, I think that would be a lot better than going back to Gaza, which has had just decades and decades of death.
Where would those pieces of land be?
Well, they could be in Jordan, and they could be in Egypt, and they could be in other places. You could have more than two, more than one, but you could have more than two, and you'd have people living in a place that could be very beautiful and safe and nice. Gaza's been a disaster for decades.
Would the U.S. pay for that?
I don't think the UN would pay, but I think there's plenty of people that would in the area. They have a lot of money. They certainly have a lot of money. Some of the countries over there, they'd like to see it. I know that Saudi Arabia wants to see peace. I can see that. And many of the countries there, as far as I'm concerned, they all want peace. I think, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think Iran would like to see peace too. They've had enough. Don't you think they've had enough?
But the leaders of Egypt and Jordan have said bluntly they have no interest in doing this.
Well, they may have said that, but a lot of people said things to me. They said they wouldn't take anybody back in Venezuela, and right now they're flying them right back into Venezuela. And a lot of people, and they're doing the right thing in Venezuela. The Panama Canal is an active discussion right now. They said things about that. And virtually everything that's been said has been incorrectly stated based on the result.
Doesn't that amount to forcibly displacing, or wouldn't that amount to forcibly displacing those people from Gaza? If
I don't think so. I think if they had the opportunity, they'd love it. If they had an alternative to Gaza. They have no alternative right now. I mean, they're there because they have no alternative. What do they have? It is a big pile of rubble right now. I mean, have you seen the pictures of it? Have you been there? It's terrible to live. Who can live like that? And very dangerous. There's shooting all over the place. There's bombing all over the place on both sides. Now, I would think if they had an option of moving to an area, either in a large group or various smaller groups, and take care of the close to 2 million people, I would think that they would be thrilled to do it. They have no, when you say about the Gaza Strip, they don't have an option.
To be clear, you're saying they'd be thrilled.
It's very dangerous.
They'd be thrilled to leave Gaza.
Oh, I think they'd love to leave Gaza if they had an option. Right now, they don't have an option. What are they going to do? They have to go back to Gaza. But what is Gaza? There's practically not a building standing, and they're very dangerous. Those buildings are shifting, and they're falling down all over the place, and there's gunfire all over. It's going to be that way for a while.
Mr. President, wouldn't it have made more sense to evacuate people while the war was ongoing rather than now when there's a ceasefire?
Which is what you're talking about?
When it was more dangerous when there were strikes overhead than now.
Well, the strikes could start tomorrow. There's not a lot left to strike. Exactly. It's a demolition site. The whole place is demolished. It's unsafe. It's unsanitary. It's not a place where people want to live.
Mr. President,
nobody's got. They have no alternative but to go back. If we gave them an alternative of living in a beautiful open place with some, nice quarters there, nice housing of sorts, and we have the money in the Middle East to build that.
Do you support Israelis actually moving back and creating setup buildings?
Not necessarily, no. I just support cleaning it up and doing something with it, but it's failed for many decades. And somebody will be sitting here in 10 years or 20 years from now, and they'll be going through the same stuff, the wars. And they've had civilizations on Gaza, many civilizations on Gaza, and they're buried in the sand.
Secretary
It
Rubio.
doesn't seem to work.
Secretary.
Thank you, sir. On Elon Musk, how often are you talking to him? And have there been ideas that he's brought to you that you've said, oh, no, wait a minute, this is going a little too far?
Well, many ideas, but look, he's done a great job. Look at all the fraud that he's found in this U.S. AID. It's a disaster what the people, radical left lunatics, they have things that nobody would have even believed. The whole thing with $100 million spent on you-know-what, with money going to all sorts of groups that shouldn't deserve to get any money, with the money. I'd like to see what the kickbacks are. How much money has been kicked back? Who would spend that kind of money to some of the things that you read about and I read about and I see every night on the news and every morning when I read the papers? Who would spend money for that? I would say this, the people that got all that money, are they kicking it back to the people that gave it from government? No, that's, to me, very, very corrupt. The real question is, how much of a kickback has there been? And one of the things I want to investigate rapidly, because I've never seen anything to this extent, the train that's being built between Los Angeles and San Francisco is the worst managed project I think I've ever seen, and I've seen some of the worst. Billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars over budget. In fact, I read where you could take every single person that was going to go on the train and get the finest limousine service in the world and take them back and forth with limousines, and you'd have hundreds of billions of dollars left over. It is the worst thing, and we're going to start an investigation in that because it's not possible. I built for a living, and I built on time, on budget. It's impossible that something could cost that much. And now it's not even going to San Francisco, and it's not going to Los Angeles. They made it much shorter. So now it's at little places way away from San Francisco and way away from Los Angeles. No, we're going to start a big investigation on that because I've never seen anything like it. Nobody has ever seen anything like it. The worst overruns, that there have ever been in the history of our country. And it wasn't even necessary. I would have said, you don't buy it. You take an airplane. It costs you $2. It costs you nothing. You take an airplane. But this got started, and if you have to, you drive. You can drive.
Are there other agencies?
They have hundreds of billions of dollars of cost overruns, and it's not even the same project. It's much shorter. It's way outside of San Francisco and way outside of Los Angeles. So we're going to be looking into
Who's
that.
going to investigate that? Is that DOJ is going to investigate the train?
No, I'm doing that myself. No.
Some of these Doge engineers that Elon Musk has helping him are as young as 19 years old.
That's good. They're very smart, though, Peter. They're like you. They're very smart people.
Thank you. Have you met any of these guys?
No, I haven't seen them. They work actually out of the White House. They're smart people. Unlike what they do in the control towers, where we need smart people, we should use some of them in the control towers where we were putting people that were actually intellectually deficient. That was one of the qualifications, is you could be intellectually deficient. No, we need smart people. Some are young and some are not young. Some are not young at all. But they found great things. Look at the list of things. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. I'll read off a list of 15 or 20 things that they found inside of the USAID. It has to be corrupt. Nobody could approve that. They could only approve that if they were getting kickbacks. And you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars.
And it sounds like you're going to wind down USAID.
It sounds like it. I mean, I think so. Yeah.
So when that happens, which part of the government?
Well, I could see Marco Rubio being in charge, State Department, because they're giving money to. I mean, some of the money is well spent, I guess, but much of it is really fraudulent.
And on the education department, why nominate Linda McMahon to be the education department secretary if you're going to get rid of the education department?
Because I told Linda, I hope you do a great job and put yourself out of a job. I want her to put herself out of a job. Education department. So we're ranked number 40 out of 40 schools, right? We're ranked number 1 in cost per pupil. So we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world, and we're ranked at the bottom of the list. We're ranked very badly. And what I want to do is let the states run schools. I believe strongly in school choice, but in addition to that, I want the states to run schools, and I want Linda to put herself out of a job.
Do you think that's something you can do with an executive order? Or
I'd like to be able to do it. Yeah, I would like to be able to do it. Look, if I could give the schools back to Iowa and Idaho and Indiana and all these places that run properly, there's many of them. I think so. If you look at the list, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, believe it or not, China's doing very well on that list, a list of well-educated, where they run their school system well. You have a lot of countries, not surprising names. I think that if you moved our schools into some of these states that are really well-run states, they would be as good as Denmark and Norway and Sweden and some of the other states. And then you'd have the laggards, and you know who they are. I don't have to go to it, but you'd have the laggards, the same laggards that are laggards with everything else, including crime. But even them, you'll break it into systems. As an example, if you went to New York, you go to Westchester County, you go to Dutchess County, you go to Suffolk and Long Island and Nassau and Long Island. You have maybe 6 or 7 locations. And you have New York City, which would include the 5 boroughs. And I think even that would run much better than it does right now. Same thing with Los Angeles or California. You'd have Riverside, you'd break it up into 6 or 7, but most of them would be states, and you'd have one, like in Iowa, you give it to the state of Iowa, you give it to the state of Indiana, these are really well-run states. They don't have debt, they don't have problems, they don't have any crimes, relatively speaking, to speak of. And you would have education that would be the equivalent of Norway and Denmark and various other places that are at the top of the list. So we're at the bottom of the list, and we're the most expensive. We're at the top of the list when it comes to cost per pupil. We spend more money per pupil than any other nation in the world, and yet we're rated number 40. The last ratings came out, you saw them. So they talk about 40 countries. We're rated number 40. And I say that if we did this, we would we would go 20, 30 notches up. We could do great. And we would have some of the best districts in the world.
But are you looking to do that with an executive order, sir, or do you need to work with Congress?
Well, there are some people that say I could. I think I'd work with Congress. I think we'd have to work with the teachers union, because the teachers union is the only one that's opposed to it. Nobody else would want to hold them back. Look, we have to tell the teachers union, we're rated last in the world in education of the top 40. We're rated last. We were 38. Now we're 40. We went to 39. We went to 40. We're 37. But we're at 40 now. The thing just came out. That's under Biden. Remember that?
Secretary Rubio announced a deal this week that would allow potentially American citizens who are criminals to be put in a different country. Is that something you're looking to do?
No, I didn't know that he announced that yet, but if he did, it's fine, yeah. We have hardened criminals, horrible people. You see him pushing people into subways. The train is coming. Last week, guy walking around and just sees somebody waiting for the train. Train's coming 40 miles an hour, and he gets pushed into the subway. And that happens all the time. These are sick people. If we could get them out of our country, we have other countries that would take them. It's no different than a prison system, except it would be a lot less expensive, and it would be a great deterrent. Send them to other countries. If we could go a step further, in other words, we're talking about getting the criminals out of our country that come in through other countries illegally, right? The illegal migrants, as I call them. Well, we have people that are just as bad as them in our country. If we could get them out, I'd be very happy.
El Salvador said that he would wanted you to pay a fee for that. Would you pay that?
Well, it's a very small fee compared to what we pay to private prisons.
But under what authority?
And a very, very small fee. I don't know. We'll have to find that out legally. I'm just saying, if we had the legal right to do it, I would do it in a heartbeat. I don't know if we do or not. We're looking at that right now. But we could make deals where we'd get these animals out of our country. And you know, if you take the shooters, the people that hit old ladies in the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking, that walk down the street, the people that you see it, the people that take out a gun and shoot you for no reason at all. If we could get these animals out of our country and put them in a different country under the supervision of somebody that made a relatively small fee to maintain these people, because you know what? These are criminals. You call them hardened criminals. They've been in jail 40 times. There's one 42 times. And every time the person gets out, it's a he. Every time he gets out, he commits another crime within 24 hours. And it's a heinous crime. It's a rough crime. We don't want these people in our country either. We don't want them in our country. If we had the option to get them out and let them be based in some other country at a fraction of the cost, and frankly, they could keep them, because these people are never going to be any good. That person that has been arrested 42 times or 22 times or 17 times and is all in for manslaughter and everything else, and only gets out because of a very weak judicial system that only goes after people like Trump. They don't go after the criminals. They don't go after people like this. And they laugh at our law. If that took place, you would have a lot less crime automatically.
So is there exploring whether they on Guantanamo Bay, is there enough space there to accommodate?
There's a lot of space to accommodate a lot of people, yeah, so we're going to use it.
Can you talk a little bit
We have
about
it. It's
why?
already up. We have it for nothing. But we can do less expensive and even more secure. We've had other countries come to us saying, we would love to do that. We would love to take your criminals and we'll maintain that. We'll be their jail. And I'm only talking for the most severe cases. Like, I watched that guy on tape pushing the man into the subway last week. That man that did that is a real bad guy. Many, many arrests. And do you think you're going to convince him someday to be good and a wonderful, wonderful citizen for our country? It's never going to happen. I want to get those people out. I'd love to get them out along with the illegal migrants. The migrants are rough, but we have some bad ones too. I'd like to get them out. It would be all subject to the laws of our land, and we're looking at that to see if we can do it.
What other countries have offered to take American citizens?
Say it?
What other countries have offered to take these Americans?
Numerous, many. And Marco brought it up today. I'm glad he did, because a lot of people are thinking it. When I watch some of the crimes being committed in New York City and Chicago, look at Chicago, the volume of crime that they have and the viciousness of the crime. These people are horrible people. And if somebody thinks they're going to be wonderful citizens someday, they're wrong. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They're bad. These are hard, tough criminals. In many cases, they're crazy. They're absolutely crazy. But they're very dangerous. If I could get them out of the country and be in some other country where they're glad to have them because they make a small fee compared to what we'd pay to a private prison or to, put them in one of our prisons that costs even more money, I think it would be great. I'd love to get them the hell out of our country. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, coming up, egg prices are on the rise. It's hard to say when things will improve. Supermarkets, restaurants, and consumers are all having to adjust. We'll have much more after this break. Stay with us.
Kids love it. Parents trust it.
Obviously.
Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjion Campus courses led by expert educators.
This is spectacular.
Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more.
Wow.
All while having fun.
Perfect.
Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
There's a whirlwind of emotion and activity going on in this painting. And there's chaos all around and threat from below. The wolves surrounding her, and they're anything but unmoved. They're moving all the time, and we sense that. But this little girl remains unmoved.
She's in quite a perilous situation, but she's completely strong and serene, and she's actually meditating. It was very, very well liked because no matter what culture or what sort of walk of life you're from, I think people, they see it and they immediately understand what that energy, what that message is, and they're drawn to it because everybody kind of needs a little bit of that in their own life, of, the steadfast calmness and something to hold on to. It's definitely an inner peace in the midst of something very chaotic, and for a lot of people right now, the whole world is very, very chaotic, so I guess that's another reason why so many people are very drawn to this.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Paul Graney. President Trump has charged forward with his global tariff agenda, how Americans are reacting to the president's new tariff strategy. The U.S. announces a tariff, then China hits back with export controls, the trade battle brewing that now includes critical minerals. Egg prices are on the rise. It's hard to say when things will improve. Supermarkets, restaurants, and consumers are all having to adjust. Super Bowl ticket prices are down thousands of dollars from last year. Are people tired of watching the Chiefs?
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
It's great to have you with us this afternoon. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has continued his Latin American tour today. He's in Costa Rica meeting this president. They discussed illegal drug trafficking. Rubio says Costa Rica does not produce drugs, but illegal gangs use the country to smuggle while on their way to the United States. The secretary says he wants to help Costa Rica stop those gangs.
But when you confront these groups, they become violent and they become vicious,
And so we want to see how we can work, perhaps by allowing more DEA and FBI resources to conduct investigations together with your police and your law enforcement to identify and help you capture and arrest them and bring them to justice.
Rubio then went on to draw similarities between drug traffic and illegal immigration in Costa Rica. He says the nation is not a source of illegal immigration, but people pass through the country while trying to get to the United States. Rubio suggests that some of those people could endanger national security. That is why he wants to increase the partnership in biometric data sharing with Costa Rica.
Elements from all over the world, from other continents, from Africa, from the Middle East, that have links to terrorism, that have been stopped through our biometric sharing programs and identified and prevented from moving forward and doing God knows what if they had ever reached the United States.
Rubio also addressed a recent freeze of foreign aid programs. The Trump administration paused all State Department programs so that they could review them and see which ones to continue and which ones to stop. Rubio today said all life-saving programs are exempt from the pause. This includes programs that provide food, medicine, or similar services. And with recovery efforts in progress, leaders of the Los Angeles Unified School District shared updates on their plans to rebuild after the Palisades fire. This includes significant funding commitments. NTD's Christina Corona has the details.
We're here in downtown Los Angeles outside the LA Unified School District headquarters where Superintendent Alberto Cavallo, as well as members of the Board of Education, gave an update on the recovery and rebuilding efforts following the Palisades fire. The Los Angeles Unified School District has committed up to $2.2 billion this year to support recovery efforts, with $725 million specifically allocated to rebuilding 3 schools impacted by the fire. The first major milestone is the removal of debris, with officials saying it will be completed within the next few months.
If in fact the debris removal is achieved by May, and soil contamination tests, air quality tests, all of the environmental concerns are addressed by May, then we can begin an expedited process that would lead to the deployment of bungalows, temporary classrooms onto those sites.
The temporary classrooms will be deployed to ensure students can return while permanent rebuilding begins. Some structures at Palisades Elementary and Palisades High that survived the fire may be ready for use by the 2025-2026 school year, pending successful testing and decontamination. Superintendent Alberto Cavallo also stressed the importance of expedited state approvals and waivers to meet these ambitious recovery timelines. The superintendent said the recent anti-ICE protests in Los Angeles have disrupted school attendance, with Monday's turnout dropping 20% below average. He emphasized that schools remain what he called safe spaces, saying the district would protect the rights of students, staff, and the 350 employees with temporary protected status, who he says are essential members of the community.
But depriving children of their education by keeping them home, away from school, does not help anyone. We are here to support you. All of our campuses are safe zones.
Superintendent Alberto Cavallo announced that they will be monitoring the students' attendance for weeks and months to come. Reporting from downtown Los Angeles, Christina Corona, NTD News.
And New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed a bill aimed at concealing the names of doctors who prescribe abortion medication in states where abortion is banned. The law allows doctors to use the name of their medical practice on prescription labels of abortion pills instead of their own name. A doctor in New York was recently indicted by a Louisiana grand jury for allegedly sending an abortion pill to a pregnant minor in Louisiana. Louisiana is seeking to extradite the doctor to face criminal charges. Abortion is almost entirely banned in Louisiana. Hochul said that Louisiana authorities likely identified the doctor through the abortion pill prescription label. And the Trump administration is investigating allegations of anti-Semitism on college campuses. The Education Department announced yesterday it was opening inquiries at 5 universities, including Columbia and Berkeley. The department criticized these colleges, plus the University of Minnesota, Northwestern University, and Portland State University, for allowing anti-Semitism following the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. In a statement, the Education Department called former President Biden's response, quote, toothless. The Department of Justice, meanwhile, announced a multi-agency task force yesterday to tackle anti-Semitism in schools and universities. This comes after an executive order from President Trump warning, quote, resident aliens who joined in pro-jihadist protests would be deported. And China has imposed targeted tariffs on American imports today, launching a response to sweeping duties on Chinese imports from President Trump. Here's a closer look.
U.S. tariffs on China are now in effect, with an additional 10% duty placed on all their goods from 1 minute past midnight on Tuesday. China retaliated within minutes, with its finance ministry announcing it will apply a 15% tariff on U.S. coal and liquefied natural gas on February 10th, as well as an additional 10% on crude oil, farm equipment, and some vehicles. A White House spokesperson had said Monday that President Donald Trump will be speaking with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in the next couple of days, as the world's two largest economies seek a deal that could avert a broader trade war and avoid a deepening conflict. The call would be Trump and Xi's first known talks since Trump took office on January 20th. On Saturday, Trump ordered sweeping tariffs on goods not only from China, but also Mexico and Canada. Part of demands they stop the flow of illegal fentanyl, a leading cause of drug overdoses in the U.S. Trump backed away from his tariff threat against Mexico and Canada on Monday after speaking to leaders of both countries. Before China's Lunar New Year holiday, a foreign ministry spokesperson insisted that Beijing has always firmly safeguarded its national interests, but signaled an openness to talks. On Monday, Trump threatened to further ramp up tariffs on China. He described Tuesday's tariffs as an opening salvo. During his campaign for the presidency, Trump had promised a steeper levy of 60% on Chinese goods. The U.S. has said China is the primary source of the precursor chemicals synthesized into fentanyl by drug cartels in Mexico. China has called fentanyl America's problem and said it would challenge the tariffs at the World Trade Organization.
And the European Union says it's ready for tough negotiations with the United States to protect its own interests. Trade ministers gathered in Warsaw today to discuss transatlantic relations following threats of tariffs by President Trump.
I worked with Donald Trump for years when I was Prime Minister, and if you are weak, he eats you. And if you don't negotiate, he kills you. So, in fact, you need that. He's losing the appetite on Europe. I think this is how we should deal with him, be strong, but being united.
We do believe that we have to maintain our multilateral trade system, but at the same time, we don't have to be naive, and we must prepare the worst, meaning retaliation if needed.
We believe that through constructive engagement and discussion, we can resolve this problem. We are prepared for this negotiations, but also at the same time it's very clear that if it would be hit unfairly or arbitrarily, we will respond firmly.
EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said Europe will be pragmatic in finding solutions. Trump declared over the weekend that he will soon impose tariffs on imports from the EU. Von der Leyen said today that a lot is at stake on both sides. The EU leader says jobs, businesses and industries in Europe and the United States rely on the transatlantic partnership. And still to come, Super Bowl ticket prices are down thousands of dollars from last year. Are people tired of watching the Chiefs? That and more after the break.
I'm Amy Grant, and I want to talk to you from my heart about the heart. I would have been the last person on the list to say this woman has a problem with her heart. So no, there was nothing about my life that said, you have a ticking time bomb in your chest. But I did. I wound up in the office of a cardiologist because I was there with my husband. And at the tail end of that, the cardiologist looked at me and said, I want to see you. No one was more surprised than I was to learn I was living with a rare heart condition. He said, Amy, this condition, you'll be fine, and then catastrophic. A few months later, I had open heart surgery that saved my life. And I owe it to the research and life-saving medical breakthroughs developed by the American Heart Association. That's why I'm asking you to join me and become a monthly donor to the American Heart Association. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. If this could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, but your support can save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card and we'll send you this special t-shirt you can wear to show you're part of a community of monthly donors working to help save more lives like mine. I'm grateful for the American Heart Association. Their research gave me more time to do the things I love with the people I love. So listen to your heart. I'm here today because I did. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor and help save even more lives. Thank you.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
Yeah, so there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
All right, thanks for joining us. It's time for Business Matters this evening. Almost immediately after President Trump imposed an additional 10% tariff on imported Chinese goods, China announced sweeping export controls on new minerals: tungsten, inium, binsum, tellurium, and rhodium. The 5 metals are used across defense, clean energy, and other industries. The critical minerals are used for artillery shells, TV and phone displays, solar panels, and memory chips. Beijing has already restricted graphite, antimony, germanium, gallium, and lithium, and some technology used to process the minerals. China has also banned the export of rare earth magnets used for EV, wind turbines, and electronics. And snacks have fallen out of favor. Based on PepsiCo's latest outlook, the Doritos maker is battling weakening demand for its sodas and snacks in the United States, which is its largest market. Its 2 biggest segments are PepsiCo's North America's beverages and Frito-Lay North America. Both have reported a 3% decline in volume in the 4th quarter. As a result, the company is forecasting its annual profit to fall below expectations that will miss quarterly revenue estimates. Pepsi has promised heavy investment to overhaul existing products and introduce new items to increase demand. And now it may be harder for shoppers to find a steal online. Experts are expecting Shein, Temu, and Amazon Haul to raise prices for shoppers in the United States. That's because President Trump has shut down a trade loophole often used by Chinese e-retailers. Fast fashion retailer Shein and online dollar store Temu both use de minimis exception. This allows shipments under a certain value to enter the U.S. tax and duty-free. Congressional report found that Temu and Shein likely account for about a third of all packages shipped to the U.S. every day under the provision. Temu is a subsidiary of Chinese e-commerce giant PDD Holdings. Shein is headquartered in Singapore. Both have taken measures to source more products outside of China. And rising egg prices continue to hit the nation. Since January 2022, over 100 million birds have been slaughtered due to avian flu. According to the American Farm Bureau Federation, the higher costs are finding their way to consumers through restaurants, eateries, and supermarkets. Signs are being posted at some locations to warn consumers of the higher costs. And NTD's Sean Marshall gives us an update on the situation.
An extra 50-cent charge per egg. That's the temporary surcharge restaurant chain Waffle House has had to implement due to egg shortages. Waffle House alone serves 272 million eggs per year, the chain's most served item. The average price of a dozen of its usual large grade A eggs was $4.15 in December, up from $3.65 in November, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And it's all down to avian flu. Supermarkets like Whole Foods are also impacted. This Whole Foods in Midtown Manhattan has a 3-carton per customer limit on eggs, which isn't too bad for one of the most expensive cities in the country. There's a sign posted saying that they are currently having difficulty sourcing eggs that meets their strict animal welfare standards. Mike Vickers, a manager at Center's Liquor and Supermarket in Minneapolis, said he can't even stock any organic, cage-free or brown eggs right now and is limited instead to selling large or jumbo eggs.
It's the first time in my life that I've ever had to be kind of embarrassed on what I'm selling eggs for, and it's not our fault. We're paying today $7.45 for a dozen eggs. We're selling for $7.59. We're making 14 cents. That doesn't pay the bills.
Anyone thinking about raising their own chickens will quickly find out that there are no free or inexpensive eggs. Hobby farmers say there's a huge learning curve to begin, and the cost for a coop alone can range from $200 to $2,000. A bag of feed every 2 weeks can be $15 to $20 a bag, with a number of other costs to keep the birds healthy. The Agriculture Department predicts the cost of eggs is going to jump another 20% this year. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
And insurance company State Farm is requesting a 22% emergency rate hike for California homeowners. It comes after extensive damage from Los Angeles area wildfires, with the California state officials now saying it would have to improve the increase. It would supposedly only be temporary, though. Rental policies would also jump 38%, and the rate for tenants would rise 15%. All the changes would come into effect May 1st, if approved. In dealing with thousands of claims from the recent fires, State Farm issued around $1 billion. The rate increase would give the company funds to rebuild its capital base, with the company saying in a letter to the California Insurance Authority that these fires would be the most expensive for insurance payouts in its history. And AT&T has penned a deal to bring new voice services to customers, like integrating AI and machine learning capabilities. Nokia announced that it has signed a multi-year expansion agreement with the U.S. telecom operator. Under the deal, Nokia will upgrade AT&T's voice carriage and 5G network automation in the U.S. The senior VP at AT&T said the company is pleased to continue its relationship with Nokia to optimize network operations and enable new services for customers. And along with some tariffs on U.S. products, China also announced a wide range of measures targeting U.S. businesses, including Google, as well as farm equipment makers and fashion brand Calvin Klein's owner.
China's Commerce Ministry said it put PVH Corp, the holding company for brands including Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, and US biotechnology firm Illumina on its unreliable entity list. Companies added to the blacklist can be subject to fines and a range of other sanctions. These include a freeze on trade and revocation of work permits for foreign staff. Separately, China's State Administration of Market Regulation said Google was suspected of violating the country's anti-monopoly law and said it initiated an investigation into the company in accordance with the law. Google products, such as its search engine, are blocked in China. but it works with local partners such as advertisers in the country.
And last month, U.S. manufacturing activity expanded for the first time since 2022. Orders also increased and production sped up. The Institute for Supply Management's manufacturing gauge went up to a reading of 50.9 in January. Anything over 50 indicates growth. Meanwhile, new orders were higher for a fifth straight month. This indicates an increase in demand, which led producers to boost their output. The data was collected before President Trump announced a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico, which risked disrupting supply chains for U.S. producers. Yesterday, the administration reached deals with both countries that put those tariffs on hold for at least a month. And Spotify reported its first full year of profitability since its founding nearly 20 years ago. The Swedish audio streamer reported a profit of nearly $1.2 billion for 2024. It also reported its monthly active users jumped 12% for the fourth quarter, the highest fourth quarter increase in its history. Last year, the tech giant raised subscription prices in many parts of the world to help boost its revenue. Spotify was founded in 2006 and went public in 2018. And the new streamer entered the crowded competition for viewers. Fox Corp is planning to launch a subscription-based streaming service by the end of this year. CEO explained that Fox wants to reach a large population that is outside the traditional cable bundle. Spokesperson said the new service will feature all Fox content, including its news network. The owner of Fox News largely sat out of the streaming wars, instead betting on an ad revenue from its free Tubi streaming service. The company also reported second quarter sales and profit well above Wall Street expectations, boosted it by a surge in election-driven advertising on its news network. And General Motors has taken the wheel at Cruise. The car maker has completed its full acquisition of Cruise, now shifting its focus to autonomous technology for personal and not robo-taxis. A Cruise spokesperson said the merger will mean half of its staff will be cut. Since 2016, GM had invested roughly $10 billion in Cruise. In December, it said it would halt funding of the robo-taxi business, with the Detroit automaker planning to integrate the Cruise technology into its Super Cruise system. This system is available in more than 20 GM models and allows hands-off driving across North America. And from allied neighbors to a communist regime on the other side of the world, how are everyday Americans reacting to Trump's tariff strategy? NTD Sam Wong was out of the National Mall in D.C. to hear from them.
I was happy to hear about it. Mexico caved, Canada's next.
Well, I guess I'm in favor of it just because the trade agreements have been so one-sided.
I don't understand why we are going to impose tariffs on our friendly ally neighbors, our largest trading partners. They're going to put the same tariffs back on us, so it's going to be a net neutral effect.
At this point, I don't know how good that's going to work, but I think it's going to get into a discussion with Canada and Mexico and China.
China is the number one enemy, militarily, politically, socially. They're communists, and we need to be strong with them, against them. And I think Trump will probably do okay.
The administration's argument is that the tariffs can potentially offset the national debt and also bring manufacturers back home. So do you think there's merit to that argument?
I do believe there's merit to that argument. I think it will, if people want to avoid tariffs or companies want to avoid tariffs, yeah, they'll come back to the United States and build their product here.
Economics is not an exact science, okay? A lot of politics are involved. So more than likely, down the road, things will get better. They can't get any worse, believe me.
I don't think that's a tried and true practice. I don't see where all the additional revenue is going to come back to the federal government on the backs of the consumers.
I think as we kind of equalize the trade deficits and the differences between the countries and what we're sending in and sending out, I think it'll kind of equal itself out at a certain point.
A lot of people are concerned about prices going up, the prices of goods. So are you one of those people who share that concern?
Early on, prices may go up a little, but the bottom line is these countries have to treat us democratically the way we treat them. And there may be a short rise in prices, but they'll come down sooner or later.
Well, fortunately, I'm of economic means that the grocery prices aren't going to affect me that much. It bothers me that prices are going to go up for people that can barely afford to sustain themselves today.
Prices always gone up. I mean, I'm 51 years old, and gases went from 50 cents a gallon to $4 a gallon. So whether they're tariffs or not, things are going to go up.
This is money that we haven't been getting from these countries. I'm hoping it works, just to, get a little discussion going, and maybe they'll figure it out that way.
I mean, there is an element of that. I mean, especially with business, my company will feel a little bit of that, but I think it's more of a short-term pain than a long-term pain.
And job openings at U.S. businesses shrank much more than expected to close out 2024. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports the number of available jobs sank from 8.16 million in November to an estimated 7.6 million in December. That's lower than economists expected. Some of the biggest drop-offs in openings were at small businesses for white-collar worker roles. Most of the slowdown came from a pullback in hiring since layoffs continue to remain low. And Estee Lauder expanded a restructuring plan that would now involve up to 7,000 job cuts. The cosmetics giant is struggling with persistent demand weakness. The company now expects third-quarter profit to come in well below expectations, citing challenges in its Asia travel retail business. That's particularly at airports and travel destinations in Korea and China. Estee Lauder has faced challenges in boosting sales growth in China due to high unemployment there. It's also a struggling economy and increasing preference for local brands. China accounted for roughly a quarter of the company's sales in 2024. And Super Bowl 59 tickets are now thousands of dollars cheaper than last year. So are people tired of watching the Chiefs? Here's the story.
There's sort of a bit of a who cares. It would have been a different story if it was the Washington Commanders versus the Buffalo Bills.
Marketing expert and football fan Doug Zarkin says this year's Super Bowl ticket prices are lower than last year's, largely because the Chiefs have played too many times, 4 out of the past 5 games, making non-Chiefs fans feel a bit blasé. The cheapest tickets this year are around $4,200, according to ticket resale platform Game Time. Last year, they were over $8,700. Another reason? Caesars Superdome in New Orleans.
The Superdome is bigger than Allegiant Stadium in Vegas, and so there are actually just more ticket available. More of what I call the cheap seat tickets, because it's got a much higher seating capacity.
Allegiant Stadium, site of last year's Super Bowl, isn't just smaller. Super Bowl 58 also had record low attendance, a little over 61,000 people. Zarkin himself has attended 4 Super Bowls. His tip on getting budget-friendly tickets? Don't give up hope.
The further along it gets into the game, the more likely you are to get a good seat at a better price. There's nothing wrong with going into a game at the middle of the first quarter. A, you'll beat the lines. B, you still have an entire 3.5 quarters worth of football to enjoy. So I would say play a little bit of the waiting game. You'll probably get lucky.
Super Bowl 59 takes place this Sunday, starting at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Fans who don't attend can also watch on TV or stream for free on Tubi.
And the Grammys may be music's biggest night, but Sunday night wasn't the award ceremony's biggest showing. Viewership was down 9% compared to last year. Sunday's Grammy Awards drew 15.4 million people in 2024. That was nearly 17 million. This year's decline breaks a 3-year streak during which viewership steadily increased. Even so, the awards ceremony is still positioned to be one of the most watched entertainment shows of the year. Grammy's producers said ahead of the time they didn't expect a ratings bump this year. That's amid the devastation of the California wildfires. The Grammys delayed its marketing blitz leading up to the show. And a popular quartet will soon be appearing on a big screen near you. Marvel Entertainment has released a trailer for The Fantastic Four: First Steps. The movie will introduce Marvel's first family, Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, Human Torch, and The Thing. The heroes are forced to defend the Earth from a space villain's plan to destroy the planet. The film stars Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, and Ralph Ineson. This is the first Fantastic Four movie release in 10 years. 2015's Fantastic Four received quite scathing reviews and flopped at the box office. The new film is scheduled to debut in theaters on July 25th. And we go down to Wall Street today, see what the action was on Wall Street. S&P up about 0.7%, the Dow Jones up about 3%, and the Nasdaq up about 260 points today, 1.35%. So all smiles down on Wall Street. And still to come this evening, Swedish police say about 10 people were killed during a shooting today at an adult education center. The final death toll and the number of wounded haven't yet been determined.
سال 16 سال عمري ما هفت
اما داعش کردیان برانبر خوشکو دایکان یزدی ما کاری که دور لهمو چمت دموکراسی و مافکانی مرو و انسانیت او بارودوخی که است های به تایبت لعراق و سوریا بشه که دگرت و با حالانه که اداره اوباما کرد
مریم بو او هفت روز بو و داعش از کرد تامبوم کرا قوتینیز گریا بما متشکر به هر فیدن نبو باوان رحم نبو ودمنا سوالم منخدران نزل باوان نفستم بس نه مانا گو بس نش پیشوش باش.
They would literally be auctioned in front of soldiers, and then the soldiers begin to bid.
زارود وان همو جیبره تی حملی زارود دم واسسی وان همو جیبره
وحشیگریه که توا عیاره ظلمی که یک جار زور گوره لما افرطانه کرده و تعدایی که زور زوریان میده که اما نه روزانه دست فروشی ده
Imagine being a child, you know, having a child mentality, and these evil people come and wheel you away from the only safety you've ever known.
Just like all of you, I had problems sleeping. I had tried every pillow out there and nothing worked. I'd flip-flop all night, use my arm for support, and fall asleep, or I'd wake up with a sore neck or maybe a headache. Well, quality sleep comes from keeping your neck straight at night. You have to fill in that space between your head and your bed. That's why I invented MyPillow. MyPillow's patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs, and it doesn't matter if you sleep on your back, stomach, side, or any combination of all three.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night, and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get Classic King MyPillows for only $19.98. Queen size just $18.98. Standard Classic MyPillows only $14.98. That's right, only $14.98. Plus all orders $75 or more ship absolutely free.
Welcome back. The Senate Intelligence Committee advanced Tulsi Gabbard's nomination to be President Donald Trump's Director of National Intelligence today. The former Democratic Congresswoman's confirmation now depends on a full floor vote. Gabbard will need almost all Republican senators to vote yes to become the next director. The DNI nominee and a number of GOP lawmakers have been critical of the office. They argue that the agency has grown too large and politicized. Senate Intelligence Chairman Tom Cotton said today that he looked forward to working with Gabbard. The Arkansas Republican added that he hoped she would bring, quote, badly needed reforms to the office. Gabbard is a lieutenant colonel in the Army National Guard who deployed twice to the Middle East. The former Democrat ran for president in 2020. And an update on the Potomac tragedy. Unified Command reports all 67 victims from the crash have been recovered. Then it is confirmed that 66 of them have been positively identified. Now the focus is on helping the families of the victims recover as well as salvaging and investigating the remains of the wreckage. And China has imposed retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. This is after President Trump's new tariffs on China went into effect today. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley joins us now. Jack, China's economy is struggling at the moment. What kind of tariffs was China able to afford?
That's right. China put a 15% tariff on liquid natural gas and coal, some of the biggest exports coming out of the U.S., and 10% on crude, farming equipment, and cars from the U.S., so they don't get a ton of that from the U.S. anyway. But right now, like you said, China is in a downward spiral, their economy. Now, they didn't put import taxes on minerals needed for semiconductors, which is a clear example that they can't afford to put that much on the U.S. Now, Trump paused the 25% tariffs on a month or so for Mexico and Canada from his executive orders after they promised to increase border security to stop the influx of fentanyl. Now, according to the White House, Trump will speak with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in the next few days. So this deal making could be seen in the foreseeable future. But on the other hand, it would be hard to trust the Chinese regime with anything that they promise, seeing how what we know from a House report back in April, the Chinese regime directly subsidizes Chinese companies that manufacture and export fentanyl into the U.S. That's from the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. Paul?
We saw President Trump repeating this as well very recently, I believe just yesterday or this morning. Now, Jack, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he's also working to counter the communist regime's influence in Central America and to counter illegal immigration. Now, we have El Salvador's president made some shocking promises today. What's the latest on his trips there?
Right. Salvadorian President Bukele has offered to imprison violent American criminals, whether they're U.S. citizens or not. Now, Secretary Rubio says that this offer is generous, but there could be some legal issues here, and it would be up to President Trump. Take a look.
And that's an offer President Bukele made. Obviously, we'll have to study it on our end. There are obviously legalities involved. We have a constitution. We have all sorts of things. But it's a very generous offer. No one's ever made an offer like that. And to outsource at a fraction of the cost, at least some of the most dangerous and violent criminals that we have in the United States. But obviously, the administration will have to make a decision. I raised it yesterday because it's an incredible offer and an unprecedented one.
Offer is unprecedented, of course. El Salvador's prisons have notoriously poor conditions. The State Department itself even describes them as harsh and dangerous. And I know I have, as well as many other people, have seen these documentaries on just how intense those prisons can be. Now, meanwhile, Rubio was in Costa Rica today meeting with their president, and he promised more U.S. support to Costa Rica to counter drug cartels, which Trump named as foreign terrorist organizations. Here's Rubio.
But when you confront these groups, they become violent and they become vicious. And so we want to see how we can work, perhaps by allowing more DEA and FBI resources to conduct investigations together with your police and your law enforcement to identify and help you capture and arrest them and bring them to justice.
Now, Rubio's made a lot of progress here as he finishes up his first trip as top diplomat. He's going to Guatemala next and the Dominican Republic. Now, he's already visited Panama, which is working to rid itself of Chinese Communist Party influence from its ports on both ends of the Panama Canal. So we'll pay very close attention to this as that develops. Paul, back to you.
Jack Bradley, a lot to watch. Thank you so much. Now, Swedish police said at least 10 people were killed today after a gunman opened fire at an adult education center. The shooter is believed to be among those killed. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on the dreadful tragedy.
About 125 miles west of Stockholm, Swedish police in Örebro encountered a bloody scene at this adult education center. Authorities said a final death toll and number of wounded couldn't be determined yet.
What we are doing right now involves several parts. Part of this involves identifying the deceased, as well as following up on the condition of the injured. Additionally, there is an extensive investigative effort underway. We still believe that we have the primary perpetrator, although we are not ruling out connections to others.
Officials said the perpetrator wasn't previously known to police.
Right now, we feel more confident that no further attacks will take place, and the schools that were affected have been evacuated. As I see it, there is no ongoing danger, even though both we and the municipality, of course, have a significant amount of work ahead to discuss what has happened and how to ensure safety.
Police raided the suspect's home after the shooting, but it wasn't immediately clear what they found. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And President Trump's Middle East envoy said today that a 3 to 5 year timeline for reconstruction of Gaza, as set out in a temporary truce agreement, is not viable. The Trump administration reiterated its call for Arab nations to temporarily relocate displaced Palestinians in the war-torn territory.
In any city in the United States of America, if you had damage that was 1/100th of what I saw in Gaza, and I went there at the direction of the president and the national security advisor, so we would know right very specifically what was going on, nobody would be allowed to go back to their homes. That's how dangerous it is. There's 30,000 unexploded munitions. It is the buildings that could tip over at any moment. There's no utilities there whatsoever. No working water, electric, gas, nothing. God knows what kind of disease might be festering there. So when the president talks about cleaning it out, he talks about making it habitable, and this is a long-range plan. They've dug tunnels underneath there that have basically degraded the stone that you make that would form foundations. We have to examine that. You do it with borings, you do it with subterranean surveys.
How long could that take?
And this guy knows real estate.
It's years on top of years. The disposal effort in Gaza is, we estimate, 3 to 5 years just to dispose of all the things before you can look down beneath the surface of the soil, and then before you get a master plan done. And the president is intent on getting it all done correctly. So to me, it is unfair to have explained to Palestinians that they might be back in 5 years. That's just preposterous.
And he's just
Egypt, Jordan, and other Arab nations have rejected Trump's call to relocate the territory's 2.3 million Palestinians. The president is set to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House later today. The leaders are expected to discuss a long-sought Israel-Saudi Arabia normalization deal and concerns about Iran's nuclear program, and to hammer out the second phase of the hostage deal between Israel and Hamas. And the U.S. is going back to some of its foreign policy positions from the first Trump administration. President Trump today is expected to announce a full withdrawal from the United Nations Human Rights Council. A White House official said yesterday the U.S. would continue to halt funding for the UN Palestinian Relief Agency, UNRWA. The move comes as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visits Washington. The U.S. withdrew from the Human Rights Council and paused funding for the group back in 2018. Former President Biden later reversed the moves. The Biden administration once again paused funding last year amid allegations that agency staff members participated in the October 7th attack. And Vice President J.D. Vance is headed to Europe next week for his first international trip since taking office. He's expected to visit 2 countries, France and Germany. Vance is scheduled to attend the AI Action Summit in Paris, followed by the Munich Security Conference. Former Vice President Kamala Harris and Mike Pence have also attended the Munich Security Conference. And in exchange for the 1-month pause in President Donald Trump's 25% tariffs, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum starts deploying National Guard troops to the U.S. border.
We've already started moving the troops. The plan was developed by the Secretary of Defense and his team. In some areas where National Guard personnel are stationed, but security issues are less severe, they are being reassigned to the northern border. Others, who were previously stationed in the southern region, will now be moved to the northern border. This deployment does not leave the rest of the country without security, as there are a total of 120,000 National Guard members. People should know that we are not leaving any states unprotected. Rather, it is a reorientation of forces.
And still to come this evening, the Super Bowl is just around the corner. Can Kansas City pull off a historic three-peat? And Reid and Patrick Mahomes weigh in. We have that and more after the break.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming. Please call or go online now with your gift of $19 a month We'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
There's a whirlwind of emotion and activity going on in this painting. And there's chaos all around and threat from below. The wolves surrounding her, and they're anything but unmoved. They're moving all the time, and we sense that. But this little girl remains unmoved.
She's in quite a perilous situation, but she's completely strong and serene, and she's actually meditating. It was very, very well liked because no matter what culture or what sort of walk of life you're from, I think people, they see it and they immediately understand what that energy, what that message is, and they're drawn to it because everybody kind of needs a little bit of that in their own life, of, you know, the steadfast calmness and something to hold on to. It's definitely an inner peace in the midst of something very chaotic, and for a lot of people right now, the whole world is very, very chaotic, so I guess that's another reason why so many people are very drawn to this.
A painting that has true beauty. I imagine it's like a door. The artist holds the key to open the door and bring people to a purer world. A world where people are more compassionate.
Welcome back. Ukrainian battalions have spent months waiting for new armored personnel carriers to move men forward, deliver weapons, and evacuate the wounded. The soldiers in the front lines are the final destination in a long process to procure U.S. equipment. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
This 32-year-old mechanic is with the 33rd Separate Mechanized Brigade. He emphasized the critical need for armored vehicles on the front line.
There are a lot of cases where, because we don't have enough armored vehicles, we are unable to go get the injured. We did not make it in time. They died. There is a lot of this. It is difficult to talk about it.
The armored vehicles supplied by the U.S. and its allies are especially valued. Even older models offer more protection than the Soviet-era equipment typically available to Ukrainian forces.
Ukrainians can do everything. They'll handle any vehicle. It's not a problem for us. The first problem is the long waiting time for parts. If the delivery of parts is okay, the vehicle can be easily and quickly repaired.
In the final year of President Biden's term, critical decisions on weapons shipments for Ukraine face significant delays. Parliamentary Arms Control Chair Alexandra Ustinova said the waiting game was constant.
So every time we're asking for something, it comes 6-9 months later when the war has already changed. And it doesn't make that impact it could have done if it came in time.
Ustinova says she wishes she had better answers for those desperate for weapons on the front lines.
You start getting calls, where is the stuff? Where are the shells? Where are the vehicles? Where are the missiles? And you don't know what to say because there has been promises made.
Today, a Russian ballistic missile attack killed 5 people and wounded 38 in Izium. The city lies in the northeast Kharkiv region, about 30 miles from the front line. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And the new report warns that Britain faces growing blackout risks. It comes as the government pushes ahead with plans to phase out fossil fuels and replace them with renewables like wind and solar. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more from us from London.
Amid the push to meet net zero climate targets, a new report by campaign group Net Zero Watch warned that Britain faces a growing risk of blackouts. Last month, the parent company of energy supplier British Gas said that the UK had less than a week's worth of gas in store. At the time, official data showed that renewables were supplying just 16% of the UK's winter energy needs. Report author and independent energy consultant Catherine Porter said that the day last month was the tightest day for energy in 15 years.
We had very low wind generation, low capacity on the import cables, and demand was higher than expected. It meant that our spare margin was very small, and had a major power station or one of the import cables tripped off, then it would have been very difficult to avoid demand control or even blackouts.
Porter said that British Energy Secretary Ed Miliband's Clean Power 2030 plan is going to increase this risk even further. Clean Power 2030 is part of broader net zero goals and aims to replace the UK's reliance on fossil fuels with renewable sources of energy such as wind and solar by 2030. The government says this will mean cheaper energy bills for consumers and greater energy independence for the nation. But Porter says Miliband's plans will make the risk of blackouts higher.
His intention is to dominate the grid with renewables, which will make it less stable and, of course, very vulnerable to periods of low wind generation. At this time of the year, there's almost no solar, and there's no solar at all during the peak, which is dinner time. It's dark by then. And so on those low wind days, it becomes very difficult to meet demand.
The government plans to phase out methane and only use it as a reserve energy source in the run-up to 2030. In times of need, Britain also uses interconnectors, undersea cables, to buy electricity from other nations, such as Norway. However, the political landscape in Norway is shifting. The coalition government recently collapsed over a dispute over energy rules. Norway has threatened to stop energy exports to Britain and Germany via interconnectors because this is pushing up Norwegian energy prices.
And I think this is really the canary in the coal mine when it comes to energy nationalism. Norway is very open and transparent about its intentions. I think other countries realistically would take a similar approach if their own domestic markets were under threat.
This could leave the UK in a very precarious situation over the coming years. Porter suggests a solution which she says may be a bit controversial, but she also says it's the only realistic thing to do. She says that building more gas-fired power stations will ensure that Britain is protected from the risk of blackouts. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News London.
And the Super Bowl is less than a week away, and the Kansas City Chiefs are preparing for a historic showdown with the Philadelphia Eagles. Quarterback Patrick Mahomes and head coach Andy Reid praised their opponent, acknowledging the challenge ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I expect a great football team, a team that's going to play with a lot of pride, a team that's going to play hard, play fast, and they have a lot of great players. It's going to be an extreme challenge for us, and we have to be ready for that on every single snap. But that's what you want. You know, play the best in the biggest game of them all, and we're excited for that opportunity.
Oh, yeah, they're phenomenal, man. They've done a great job. They've got great players, great ownership. So it'll be, you know, we know we're playing a good football team. It takes you 2 seconds when you turn the tape on to see that.
You know, as I've watched the greats, I think more than anything, it's just to be able to win. And I know that sounds easy, but to be able to win with the team that's around you is something that's special and that the greatest do. And I think I learned that the most from Tom Brady, man. He would be whatever it took to win the football game. And as a quarterback, that's what you have to be, and that's what I've learned over my career. Yeah, every day.
Kansas City beat the Eagles 2 years ago in the NFL title game, overcoming a 10-point halftime deficit. Pundits declared the win a triumph of experience over youth. The rematch this year at the New Orleans Superdome invites an obvious revival of that youth versus experience narrative. Reid, coaching in his 6th Super Bowl, is eyeing an unprecedented three-peat, but he brushed off the idea that the Chiefs have become the NFL's villains. He says that happens sometimes when you win a lot of games for a number of years. And thanks for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Paul Graney. Stay with us for NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific.
Lagasse here, and I'm so excited to tell you about my French door air fryer 360. Extra large 26-quart capacity. Cook with up to 70% less calories from fat than deep frying. That's a big deal, my friend. 360 degrees of superheated air gives you fast, even cooking. My 10-in-1 French door air fryer 360 grills, air fries, dehydrates, roasts, bakes, broils, proofs, slow cooks, and toasts. This baby does it all. These French doors are a game changer. Look at how easy that is.
Now, find out how you can try Emeril Lagasse's French Door Air Fryer 360 with 3 cooking tiers, fetch tool, air frying rack, and drip tray in your home for 30 days for just $14.99. Order now and you'll also get Emeril's Air Fryer Favorites recipe book. And we'll automatically upgrade you to our bonus cooking kit free. Plus, find out how you can get free shipping. This offer will